I call this meeting of the Growth Policy Coordinating Committee to order. I'm Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs. Seated to my left is Haley Wilson with the Knox County Clerk's Office. Seated to my right is Mike Moyers with the Knox County Law Director's Office. Ms. Haley, would you please call roll?
Mayor Jacobs?
Here.
Mayor Kincannon? Here. Justin Bailey? Here. Darren Cardwell?
Here.
Betsy Henderson?
Here.
Broadus Hubbs?
Here.
Sarah Martin?
Here.
Amy Nolan?
Here.
Kelly Schultz?
Here.
Brian Simmons?
Here.
David Smoke? Here. John Williams III?
Here.
That's quorum, right? We have 12 members present, and that is a quorum. In addition to the elected officials on the committee itself, there are a number of elected officials in the audience that I'd like to recognize. We have Commissioner Kim Frazier from Knox County Commissioner Carson Daly, the Chair of Knox County Commission, Terry Hill, and Law Director David Book, also Farragut Mayor Ron Williams. Thank you all so much for being here. Did I miss anybody? Great. Thank you all so much. At this time, Amy Nolan will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Amy. First order of business is a motion to approve the agenda as listed. Is there a motion? So moved. Mayor Kincannon, second. Second by School Board Member Betsy Henderson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. And any opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the selection of a chair, and at this point I will open the floor up to committee members to make nominations.
Mayor Jacobs?
I'm going to pass.
Mayor Kincannon? Mr. Bailey?
I have a nomination. Is that okay?
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
All right. Mr. Cardwell? All right, Ms. Henderson? Mr. Hubbs? Ms. Martin?
Pass.
Ms. Nolan? Ms. Schultz? Mr. Simmons?
Pass.
Mr. Smoke?
Pass.
And Mr. Williams?
Pass.
Do the nominees want to speak to their interest in this role?
Mr. Williams, feel free if you'd like to.
I'm not sure I'd volunteer for it, to be honest with you, but if it's the pleasure of the committee, my role here from a KB perspective is going to be more tied to utilities, but happy to do what's in the best interest of the committee.
I think I'll just echo that. Just a good answer. I believe we'll go around and each committee member will make their choice known, Mr. Williams or myself. Yeah, and we'll start with Mayor Kincannon.
Mayor Kincannon?
I'm going to pass.
Mr. Bailey?
I'm going to really mix it up and vote for Glenn.
All right. Mr. Cardwell?
Glenn Jacobs.
Ms. Henderson? Mr. Hubbs?
Mr. Williams.
Ms. Martin?
Glenn Jacobs.
Ms. Nolan? Ms. Schultz? Mr. Simmons? Mr. Smokes?
Mayor Jacobs.
Mr. Williams?
Happy to be defeated by Mr. Jacobs.
And I'll add my vote for Mayor Jacobs as well.
And then would the House like to vote?
Okay, it's 9-1 pass. Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, 9 with 1 for Mr. Williams and 1 pass, I believe. Okay. Gotcha, okay. All right, thank you all. Mr. Williams, thank you for your willingness to serve as well. So at this point, I would like to ask the Law Director's Office, Mr. Moyers, to clarify the amendment process and to give us a quick reminder of the rules of public forum. Mr. Moyers?
All right, thank you, Mayor. Of course, the growth policy law is set up at 658-101 at SEC in the Tennessee Code. Relative to what we're doing here today is 658-104, which creates the coordinating committee and gives it its authority. When the growth policy plan was first passed back in, I think it was 2000, 2001, the growth planning advisory committee had a very broad role. Its responsibility was to formulate and create and pass the initial growth plan. When we get to the amendments, we turn to 658-104D1, which talks about the original plan being in effect for 3 years, and then after that, it can be amended. So I'm going to read the section and that is relevant and explain to you what your role is here. Anytime after the expiration of the initial 3-year period, the mayor of any municipality in the county or the county mayor or county executive may propose an amendment to the growth plan by filing notice with the county mayor or county executive and with the mayor of each municipality in the county. Upon receipt of such notice, the county mayor or county executive shall take appropriate action to reconvene or reestablish the coordinating committee within 60 days of receipt of the notice. Now, here's the part that I want you to pay close attention to. Except as provided for in this subdivision D1, the procedures for amending the growth plan shall be the same as the proceedings in the section for establishing the growth plan. The burden of proving the reasonableness and necessity of the proposed amendment shall be on the party proposing the change. In this case, Mayor Jacobs and his administration. Here's the important part. It is the duty of the coordinating committee to submit the proposed amendment with its recommendation either for or against the amendment to the county legislative body and the governing body of each municipality within the county for their approval or disapproval within 6 months of the date of the coordinating committee's first meeting on the proposed amendment. I believe this, because this is the first properly noticed meeting we've had, that would count as that first meeting for the purposes of that 6 month. After the proposed amendment is approved by the county legislative body and the governing body of each municipality and by the local government planning advisory committee, the amendment shall become part of the county's growth plan. Now, go back to that section. Basically, what this body is empowered to do is to make a recommendation either for or against the amendments that have been proposed by Mayor Jacobs. This body can take testimony from the public. It can vote on things it'd like to see in the plan if it would like, but at the end of the day, because the amendment is being proposed by the mayor, it's the mayor's discretion about whether he wants to amend it or change it in any particular way. At the end of the process, when we're ready to vote, the only motion that will be in order will be a motion to recommend or not recommend the amendments that have been proposed by the mayor. And once that is done, it will then be submitted to, whether it's recommended or not recommended, it'll then be submitted to the town of Farragut, the city of Knoxville, and the county commission for their approval or disapproval. If anybody has any questions about the process, I'm happy to answer them now. Okay.
I have a question. Mayor Jacobs has the potential to amend his own
Yes.
proposal. Okay.
He does. Now, I think that he needs any amendments that are done to it, if any are, should be brought to this body before it's final. I mean, he can't amend it after this body's voted on it, right? So once it's in what he believes is final form, this body will vote to recommend or not recommend, and then it'll be sent on to the various governing bodies.
So Mr.
It's just a question of what is a passing vote? Is it a supermajority, majority?
No,
or
it's a simple majority.
simple majority
Simple majority.
of those present, or
I believe a constitutional majority, so a majority of the membership of the body.
Mr. Law Director, can we add a amended plan?
See, that's what you're not empowered to do under this. The body can make suggestions, the body can vote on things it would like to see in the plan, but at the end of the day, because the mayor's the proponent of the amendment, he can choose to accept or not accept those amendments. Ultimately, what's before you is what the mayor wishes to put before you. If Mayor Kincannon wanted to do an amendment to the plan, she would have the same responsibility and the same privilege. She would put it forward, and the coordinating committee would be called, and ultimately would either vote to recommend or not recommend the plan.
So Mr. Moyers, what we're being asked to do is we may be able to make suggestions
Yes.
on what we'd like to see possibly amended.
Yes,
If the
yeah.
mayor's willing to do that.
Exactly. The role of the committee on amendments is much, much narrower than it is for the adoption of the initial plan. You wanted me to speak to
Did you want to say
a public,
lights on down there, is that?
anybody else?
Sorry.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. So when we send this on to an elected body, is it an up or down vote for them, or
Yes.
does it come back to us?
If it's voted down, it can come back
Okay.
for further proceedings. And then, if I recall correctly, if it's turned down again, then it either gets dropped or it goes to an administrative process in Nashville.
Thank you.
Okay, the mayor's asked me to also speak to public forum for those who do not regularly watch commission meetings or other meetings that we have here. On public forum, you'll be given a certain amount of time to speak. I think it's 3 minutes. It is a time for the public to tell the body what it thinks. It's not a really appropriate forum for a colloquy. So I would suggest to the body, listen, take on board what you hear, but debating with people at the podium is not really an appropriate thing to do. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Before the presentation from staff, I want to thank everyone for their participation in this process. It's been a Herculean effort by a lot of people. I'd also like to remind the committee and the members of the public how we got here. We started this to create a brand new comprehensive land use and transportation plan in 2021. Over the past 2 years, we have held numerous rounds of public engagement and gathered data from technical committee members, stakeholders, utility, and school subcommittees, resulting in this proposed amendment. Obviously, not everything in our proposal is going to make everyone happy. That's just the nature of these things. At the same time, I do believe that with the proposed map and text amendments in place, we will have a fiscally responsible plan to handle growth, lessen sprawl, conserve our rural areas, protect property rights, and protect the taxpayers by providing the county with better capabilities to be more proactive and less reactive when we're making decisions about infrastructure. Now, we'll hear from Amy Brooks, Executive Director of Knoxville Knox County Planning, and Jim Snowden, Senior Director of Engineering for Knox County, who will review the proposed amendment and answer questions that were asked by committee members during the last meeting. Amy?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. We will start today with a review of the proposed amendments as presented by Mayor Jacobs. Next slide, please. There we go. Thank you. The urban growth area is being proposed to grow by 5 square miles due to the annexations that have occurred over the last 20 years. The planned growth area is being proposed to increase by a total of 17.5 square miles, or 3.5% of the total land area of the county, which is 526 square miles. This is based on projected population growth, infrastructure availability, and input obtained and data analysis conducted over the last 2 years, as the mayor mentions, as part of the advanced Knox process. New categories for how to guide land use have also been created as part of this process, and these would allow more types of development than is currently provided in the planned growth area. The intent is to encourage more diverse places, such as a wider range of housing, a mix of uses, where infrastructure can support it rather than to continue to expand our infrastructure in a financially unsustainable manner. Next slide, please. The second are amendments as proposed to the text of the growth policy plan, which was last updated 20 years ago. The intent is to balance the need to accommodate the approximately 70,000 new residents that are expected in the unincorporated areas of the county. Under this proposal, developments are limited to 2 dwelling units per acre. They must occur in locations where sewer and water are available or readily available, and they must be located on a collector road with a minimum of 18 feet in width. Growth in the rural area is limited to 3 place types: rural living, rural crossroads, and rural conservation. Rural living is intended to be made up of primarily farmland, open space, single-family residential on larger lots in a rural setting. Rural crossroads are areas that may be appropriate for small commercial nodes occurring at intersections in rural areas. Think of a gas station or a tractor supply store. But they also could occur at an old historic town center or a crossroad. Rural conservation is intended to conserve forested areas, farmland ridges, wetlands, and other significant areas by clustering development and minimizing land disturbance. For this reason, it is the only rural place type that is also allowed in the planned growth area. It is a land use tool that can be used to help protect steep slopes, wetlands, ridges, and can also, all of these types of geographies can be found throughout the county, including the city and the town. Rezoning of slopes will continue to be based on the adopted policies of each legislative body. In the first meeting, questions came up about the amount of land we can expect to be consumed in the county over the next 20 years. As you all know, unincorporated Knox County, as I mentioned, is expected to grow by approximately 79,000 people over the next 20 years. The advanced Knox plan used scenarios to help determine the best ways to accommodate that growth. And the preferred scenario, which this plan is based on, and the proposed amendments are based on, indicated 20% reduction in new land consumed compared to if we continue to grow as we have been. Updating our plans would result in approximately 5,000 less acres consumed over the next 20 years. The committee also requested some additional detail on how the proposed boundaries compare to the current growth policy map, and a new layer representing prime farmland was also requested to be added. So our staff have created a new interactive map in response to those comments, and this map, along with the proposed future land use map as part of that comprehensive land use and transportation plan, have both been made available at advancedknox.org. Hopefully you all have had a chance to take a look at that. Again, at the first meeting, there was discussion around prime farmland soils and importance of preserving farmland in the county. Knox County finalized a soil survey in the mid-1990s that is still utilized today. This map identifies soil maps units suitable for horticulture and agriculture, which are typically characterized as having the best combination of physical and chemical characteristics for producing food and other crops. This plan recognizes the importance of farmland to our county and our region by focusing growth in areas with existing infrastructure availability and limiting development in the rural areas to discourage sprawl. The growth plan designation changes, coupled with the updated land use and transportation plan, will provide more options on how land can be used and reflects existing infrastructure availability. It does not direct or require expansions onto farms or open spaces. There are several tools that are much more effective than those available through zoning and land use plans to protect and preserve farmland from development, and these include conservation easements and other financial incentives. And we have someone here today who will speak to those tools in greater detail in a few minutes. And now I'm going to turn it over to Director Snowden, who will discuss the specific geographic expansions and proposed next steps.
Oh, thanks, Amy. Appreciate everybody's time and attention today. As the mayor said, when we first started this process, to allow for these new folks that are coming here over the next 20 years, we wanted to be very objective in the process in which to do that. One of the ways we did that was have technical subcommittees, because we know some of the things that drive growth in our community are schools, utilities, and roadways. So we had specific goals to really meet with those core key stakeholders and aligned this plan with those existing and proposed. So what you'll see here is just a kind of a sampling of some of that. The three areas that we've kind of grouped them into three areas that we are proposing to expand. One is the Hardin Valley and Karnes community. Obviously, a lot of growth has occurred in Hardin Valley already. And one of the things that we identified there was West Knox Utility District has spent close to $80 million in expansion of their sewer plant, actually relocating it from the Westbridge Park all the way down to very near Melton Hill. In about 2018, we did a Hardin Valley Mobility Plan because we realized that obviously there was a lot of transportation issues in that community. We identified a lot of projects there that, as you can see in this list, have since either been implemented or in the process of being implemented. Those account for about $160 million of public investment. Some of those include the new Coward Mill Elementary School, and the associated road work that's proposed with that, the extension of Cheryl Hale Boulevard, as well as Coward Mill widening. The Shawd Road Connector is the largest project we've ever had in our community, about $80 million. The last phase of that will start next year and hopefully be completed in 2 to 3 years to allow for a lot of responsible growth in that community. One of the areas that we also identified in the Hardin Valley Mobility Study was the Watt Road and Everett Road interchange. Hardin Valley has a lot of challenges as far as getting traffic in and out of it. So to allow for essentially a second entryway into that community, we've worked with the Tennessee Department of Transportation, and they have agreed to spend a total of $62 million with partnerships from Knox County to allow for that expansion. We've also got some operational improvements in that community. Several roundabouts that some are complete, some are in the process, as well as just some operational improvements on Hardin Valley Road. So that's just a sampling of projects that we felt like justified the expansion of the planned growth in that community. Next slide, please. The next area that we're proposing growth is the Gibbs and the Ritta communities. Once again, we know schools and utilities drive new growth. The things that we noticed there when we sit down with Hallsdale Pal and KUB was that they had sewer either available or it was readily available to expand. The other thing we noticed with obviously their school has invested a lot for a new middle school in that community. Those two things obviously drive a lot of residential growth. So we are proposing an expansion at this location to support that expansion in the sense of roadway infrastructure. The city does have about a $27 million project to expand portions of Washington Pike. We, in addition to that, will undertake a East Knox community plan, much like the Hardin Valley study we did a few years ago. We're in the process of creating a request for qualifications for that now. We want to get a traffic consultant on board that can look at those areas, listen to the community's concerns, and realize that over the next 20 years as growth occurs in there, we have those improvements planned and slated for improvement. Some of the other projects that you'll see in that community that support this plan are the widening of East Emory Road from Powell to Halls. That's in the States Improve Act. They're in the process of the design of that now. And obviously the adjacency to the urban growth boundary and the interstate was another, thought that we had for this community. Next slide, please. The last area that we felt like that growth was suited for was Strawberry Plains and Chapman Highway. I know those aren't necessarily adjacent to each other, but we lumped them together because they were relatively small expansions. Once again, sewer and water was available. Knox Chapman has actually got a project to expand some sewer in that community. We have Chapman Highway. We've worked with the state. There's a lot of improvements along Chapman Highway, both in Seymour and in Knox County ongoing. There's a tremendous amount of growth in population in the Seymour community as well as Sevier County. So we want to try to support that growth in that community, as well as the interstate proximity to Strawberry Plains Pike. So kind of after we went through those, we want to talk a little bit about next steps. Obviously, we've had one informal meeting last month. We're having a meeting now, today. We are tentatively proposing another meeting in December to go forward with some more discussion and potentially a vote. Should this body choose to vote and move forward a recommendation, that recommendation will obviously go to all the legislative bodies. This slide doesn't necessarily reflect it, but one thing that we've heard from some constituents is that the future land use map, as well as the general plan, should be approved in conjunction with the growth policy plan. So we will be approving those in conjunction together rather than separately. So we will hopefully get the future land use plan on January Planning Commission agenda, and then potentially February County Commission, assuming that the plan moves forward as necessary. The next thing, we have a presentation from Mr. Bill Clabo. Mr. Clabo is Executive Director of the Foothills Land Conservancy. Mr. Clabo is a former small business owner, as well as a state senator and state representative. Gentleman that's been involved in conservation for many, many years, and just an overall great guy. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Clabo.
Thank you. Madam Mayor and Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the body tonight about Foothills Land Conservancy. And Mr. Mayor, I watched Jim grow up, so if you need any stories, I can sure help you out.
We'll talk afterwards.
Foothills Land Conservancy, this is our, we've been around since 1985 doing conservation projects all over the Southeast. Next slide, please. This is our outline of what we're going to talk about briefly. I have with me tonight Shelby Sanders. Shelby is our Director of Natural Resources at Foothills. Next slide, please. Our mission statement is very simple. We try to protect and preserve and enhance the lands of the Southern Appalachian regions. This is a map. That's okay, young lady. Thank you. Go back. Go ahead. This is our region. As you can see, we're in 7 states. Very heavily done a lot of work in East Tennessee. Have done a lot of work in East Tennessee and actually in Knox County. We have just acquired another land trust in North Carolina, so our numbers are up to about 500 conservation projects and about 200,000 acres that we have protected in the 7 states. We work on farmland. This is our headquarters just across the river in Blount County. We work on an active 300-acre working farm. They have row crops, cattle operation. The lady and gentleman in the upper corner are Jim and Gail Harris. They gave us the farm along with placing a conservation easement on the property. That's the view out my window, my office window there, and with the snow and the barns on the ground. We've done a lot of work in the Beaver Creek area. As you can see, these are all conservation easements up and down the Beaver Creek area. We have also done a lot of work in the area, the proposed areas that Mr. Snowden talked about tonight. What is a conservation easement? It's a simple contract between the landowner and the land trust. It's a legal binding. Can you go back, young lady? It's a legal binding contract that spells out what can and cannot happen on the property in perpetuity. The landowner can continue to farm it, they can sell it, they can live on it, they can bequeath it, but it also always has that contract attached to the deed. Common myths, the land's given to Foothills, there's no property taxes paid on it, those type of things. And I think this is the main point that I wanted to bring out tonight that I was asked to do. There are multiple financial incentives for people that want to do conservation easements. There's a federal program that's administered by the NRCS that allows a deduction for that. It's the lower one there. It's a farmer that qualifies can actually deduct up to 100% of their AGI over a 15-year period or until the value of the conservation easement has been reduced. Other funding opportunities, again, the ACEP, ALE, it's a federal program. Shelby and I were in South Carolina recently, and a county in South Carolina actually uses some of the Greenbelt funds to come up with a fund to assist individuals. Portion of the real estate transfer tax, that's something also that we've seen. Of course, the state of Tennessee has a conservation fund that Governor Bredesen started and Governor Lee has continued. And Knox County could actually do a budgetary item that would assist people either on an annual basis or over a period of time that will assist people doing conservation easements. This is one of our farms. It's up in the Townsend area, 200-acre working farm, 5 generations. That's the Smokies, that's park in the background. We have lots of different types of farms. We have cotton farms, we have cattle farms, we have soybean farms, we have tree farms. This is a, go ahead, young lady. This is a farm in Lake County, Tennessee. It's a soybean cotton farm. It's right on the Mississippi River. Hartsoft Farm is down in Putnam County. Mr. Hartman gave this farm actually to Tennessee Tech. It has a conservation easement on it. It will never be developed. This is another farm that we have. It's overlooking the Holston River. Overlooking the Holston River up in Jefferson County. That's a view from the people's back deck. It's a cattle farm, basically, just outside of Newmarket. Color Wheel Farm. This farm is adjacent to the Kahidi development down at Von Orr, 410 acres, worth an enormous amount of money, but there's only can be one more house built on the 410 acres. This couple used their tax deduction to actually put solar panels on their farm so they're self-sufficient in their farming operation. This is a farm, the Mike Suttles farm. It's a century farm. It's in Wares Valley, probably 10 minutes from downtown Pigeon Forge. This is one in North Carolina, in Sampson County, a soybean farm. Redbud Farm is in Georgia. We did this easement actually with the University of Georgia. It has an enormous amount of Native American sites on it. You can see all the little dots. That's Native American sites that have been identified. And lastly, this is our farm. There at the office, we grow pollinator patches, sunflowers so the community can enjoy it. That's our farm. This is our information. I'm open to questions. I need to be sure and recognize Carol Evans with Legacy Parks. We do a lot of partnerships with Carol, and she's here, and appreciate all we can do with Legacy Parks as well. And questions? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Claybaugh. It's very informative. Thank you. So moving on, now is time for public forum. Please state your name and county of residence, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. I believe first up is Mr. Kevin Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and committee members. Kevin Murphy, 4508 Murphy Road, Knox County resident. I live on Murphy Springs Farm. It was settled by my ancestors in 1797, a year after Tennessee achieved statehood. Over 2 centuries, we've grown flax, potatoes, corn, milked dairy cattle, and we currently grow beef cattle. Murphy Farm is a registered century farm, and it's the largest district, National Historic Register listed places in the county. The farm is also located in the proposed planned growth area expansion out on Washington Pike. Out there, I know what it looks like when growth comes to rural area because I have the urban area directly adjacent from me and I have the city limits that are now out to me. So I'm right at the epicenter of what this looks like. Washington Pike and Murphy Road carry a combined almost 17,000 cars a day at the intersection in front of me. I didn't grow up on this farm, but I choose to move to it, to steward it and invest in the farm and invest in our community and contribute to our community. I did so because of the character of the Northeast Knox area, of the farm and the memories that I have growing up there and visiting my grandparents, and being able to do things in our historic downtown too, going to the farmers market every weekend. That's the reasons that I came here. We're here tonight, and I'm sure you're feeling, there's some tension, because we've got a few groups here. We've got some people that raise crops and livestock, and we've got some people that raise buildings and houses, and they compete for the same desirable land. And and both of those, food and shelter, are essentials for human life. So if you're feeling some tension, that's why. But why should you care a lot about this plan? In the growth plan, there's no land use or development restrictions in the planned growth area. So at the next level, when we get down to that general plan, it's going to be wide open for the give and take that occurs. And we're used to that with the sector plan and the rezoning requests that we see every month right now. Well, I think there'll be some improvements, but we'll still have some challenges. Secondly, though, a lot of our best remaining farmland is located in the planned growth area, both the old and some of the newly expanded area. And that farmland contributes to the direct agricultural output of the county, which was $2.77 billion in 2021, according to the UT Agriculture Institute. Third, there's a lot, that 6,000 acres expansion at Washington Pike. Washington Pike will need to be widened, and that's going to be really tough. It actually runs through my farm. It runs between a railroad and Ritta Elementary School, and there's some other tight places. So it's going to be tough. May I ask where I am on time? I know that
My apologies, Kevin. You've got about 30 seconds left.
Okay.
Thanks. Sorry
thank you,
about
Mr.
that.
Mayor. Yes. So the growth plan, it's a tool that does allow us to focus growth into areas that have where we're prepared to invest in our infrastructure and services. And then it does allow us to make choices on where we want to designate areas we would like to remain more rural, either due to the cost of providing services out there, a desire to conserve prime soil, or its natural beauty. There will need to be a balance. Look forward to that. I just ask you, in closing, ask yourself, what about the proposal, gives you reasons that you want to live here, and what are there things that are not so great that might make you move away? Think about that.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And apologize for the timer not being up on the screen. Do we have that? Okay. Okay, we'll work on that. Meanwhile, I have it on my phone here. So next up is Keith Britt. Mr. Britt, please approach the podium and state your name and county of residence, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Keith Britt, Knox County. I have been a champion of the Advanced Knox effort in the formulation of a new growth map and policy plan going back to early 2022. I was also very active in the Recode Knoxville effort and helped shape some policy dynamics in there. And I do think that this growth policy plan and map is vital to the future of Knox County. That being said, I find that this growth policy plan and effort has been consultant driven and very little input has been put in by community members. I think the surge in attendance you're seeing in the audience today, which is bigger than any city council or county commission meeting I've seen in recent memory, is pretty evidence of that. Most notably, I think what this is all lacking is some awareness that Knox County is not an island. We are a hub with many spokes connecting out into our 8 surrounding counties. 86.5% of the growth in this plan is directed in the Washington Pike, Gibbs, and Hardin Valley areas. And as Mr. Snowden very clearly pointed out, where this growth is planned is where the resources for community development and infrastructure will go. However, that ignores the development that we're going to see in Loudoun and Blount counties, which are going to be much more affordable housing areas than Knox County in the coming years. But they already are. And we're going to see a lot of people commuting back and forth as housing is built in those counties. I am happy to see that there have been some traffic considerations made for the development going on in Sevier County. But if we're going to neglect the infrastructure development needed to support the county-to-county connections, County Commission Districts 4 and 5 are going to suffer quite a bit. Most notably, the communities of North Shore, Tools Bend, Keller Bend, Bluegrass, and Rocky Hill. Those communities are going to be traffic nightmares, and quite frankly, they're going to become unsafe for children. So I urge you to reconsider this approach. I'd like you to go back and talk to some school principals, some longtime residents of these communities to see the changes they're already experiencing and the stresses that they're seeing on our current infrastructure. Again, I am very supportive of this growth policy effort, but just using a 30,000-foot perspective isn't going to cut it. You're going to need some boots on the ground, eyeballs. That's going to, and if you don't do that, you're going to see some pretty severe unintended consequences. Thank you for your time and Godspeed.
Thank you, Mr. Britt. Next is John Grigsby. Mr. Grigsby, please approach the podium. State your name and county of residence. You have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, fellow commissioners, my name is John Grigsby. I live at 9111 Washington Pike in the great community of Corrington, Knox County. I was born in Knoxville and I lived most of my life in Corrington. I attended Gibbs Elementary, Corrington Elementary, Gibbs Middle, and High School. Following my service in the Army, I married and settled in Corrington, where my wife and I have raised both of our children who attended Corrington Elementary and Gibbs High School. With my involvement as the Corrington PTA president, coaching various sports teams for my son, serving over 25 years as a Sunday school teacher, a member of the Corrington Community Club, and a treasurer for the next 8th District School Board member, Tommy Lakins, I feel I am deeply rooted in our community. Since 1990, I have commuted from the Pellissippi Parkway back to Corrington in support of various jobs of my career. Over the years, I've witnessed a significant increase in traffic, resulting in nearly double the commute times during rush hour. My primary concern lies in the infrastructure requirements of Northeast Knox County, especially with the anticipated surge in housing development. My family is currently in the beginning stages of building a house and a U-pick blackberry patch on my small farm that has been in our family since the mid-1800s. This property holds sentimental value to me, as I spent my childhood picking blackberries on its rural pasture fields during the summertime. I so cherished my experiences picking blackberries with my grandmother that I wrote my first book, Blackberry Wisdom, recalling our adventures. While I'll acknowledge the need for new housing in our county, I firmly believe that developers who reap substantial profits from these developments should contribute to the improvement of the rural infrastructure. I also believe that careful planning by this committee and county commission should include widening of roads with bike trail considerations, improvement to our community park, an exceptional house mountain recreational area, and upgrades to our schools. Today, I stand an advocate for a well-planned development in Northeast Knox County that preserve our rural farms, natural beauty, and allowing more people to continue enjoying the simple pleasures of life, like picking blackberries. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Grigsby. Next up is William Hill. Mr. Hill, you have 3 minutes. Please approach the podium and state your name and county of residence. And thank you for getting the timer up on the screen.
My name is William Hill, better known as Bill. I am 76 years old and have lived and worked on our family farm all of my life, except for a few years when I was away from college and in the Marines. Our farm is on Ruggles Ferry Pike in East Knox County. My grandfather bought this 145-acre farm in 1941 when he had to leave his farm and store at Douglas Lake when TVA closed the dam. My mother and father joined them on this farm a few years later after my father got out of the Army and came back from St. Louis from a government job. My mother and grandmother started milking cows in 1950. I joined the partnership in 71 after I graduated from the University of Tennessee. There, during that time, we were milking dairy cows until 1989, and at that time we sold a herd of 150 cows and started raising only beef cattle. I still live on this farm with my wife of 56 years. Our 3 children also live on this farm with their families. There have been 5 generations on this farm in my family. We currently farm approximately 405 acres, which we either own or rent. We now have beef cattle, and we grow hay and pasture. If you think that agriculture is not important in Knox County, you're sadly mistaken. Let me give you some information from the United States Department of Agricultural Statistics Service. This information was in 2017. I could not find anything any later. In the 337,000 acres in Knox County, 67,400 acres is in farmland. This makes up approximately 20% of the county. There are over 1,040 farms with a gross income of $22,351,000. If you take this $22,351,000 and use a multiplier of 5%, the ripple effect in Knox County is over $112 million that transferred to the local economy. The University of Tennessee publication SP 986, done by David Hughes in 2023, shows that the total economic effect of ag business in Knox County is over $4 billion. That is $4 billion with a B, with a total employment of over 12,000 people. On these 1,040 farms, there's a large number of animals, approximately 19,000 cattle, horses, sheep, and goats, and over 4,300 chickens. As you can see, agriculture is an important economical benefit to Knox County. Along with this economical benefit, there's others that are just as important. You have open spaces to absorb water and rainfall. On a 1 acre lot with 3 houses on that lot, with the driveways and so forth, it takes up about 40% of the area, and that causes runoff because of less ground area to absorb water. 1 acre of grass that is 4 to 8 inches tall will infiltrate 1 to 4 inches of rain per hour.
Mr. Hill, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, please, sir. I'm sorry. If you're going to finish your thought, please go ahead, sir. Thank you. Next up is Kathy Martin. Ms. Martin, please approach this podium. You'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and county of residence. Ms. Martin?
Good evening, and thank you for your consideration. My name is Kathy Martin. I live in Knox County in Corryton. My family has been farming in Knox County for over 200 years with involvement in everything from dairy, produce. We now raise beef cattle and hay. My father's family originally farmed in Powell, and my parents realized that area would not be the best place to farm like they wanted to. And they bought the farm where we are now. What they saw coming in the 1970s, in the growth in Powell, has certainly come true for that part of the county. We could not farm in Powell like we're able to in Corryton. The problems that come from closely packed subdivisions next to farms are numerous. The people who move here in the subdivisions love the views of the farms, they love seeing the animals. However, they seem to feel entitled to those views, and they don't like it when some of those views change. Arguments that we have heard from people who feel entitled to the views, and not only to that, but to use the property, have been, God put this pond here so I can use it if I want to. Or we moved here to ride ATVs, but no one will let us ride on their property. Our farms should not be treated as parks or green spaces. So this leads to very unsafe situations for all parties involved. We all know that development is coming. So what a great opportunity for Knox County to improve and provide parks and green spaces for the coming population explosion that y'all are expecting. The type of high-density growth that happened in Powell was one reason that my dad left there. And even now in Coreyton, the traffic, because of the roads in there, can make moving equipment hard. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who are moving to the area seem to have little patience with that type of situation. We're asking for protection for our farms, limit the growth, and if Knox County wants to ignore the heritage of our ag heritage in the Knox County, please just remember that our farmers do need protection from this coming growth to a certain extent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Next up is going to be Nadine Porter, and then that'll be followed by Calvin Thompson. So, Mr. Thompson, if you wouldn't mind getting on deck. Ms. Porter, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and county of residence. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nadine Porter. I'm 7406 Battle Creek Lane, Coreyton, Tennessee, at the Harbison's Crossroad in Gibbs. Thank you, Knox County, for creating the Advanced Knox Initiative. I was present at every public input forum at Gibbs Middle and all virtual sessions. While I agree that we need growth, I'm concerned about the extensive area to the planned growth that we've got on the current map in Gibbs, and particularly in the Ritta area on Washington Pike. During public input, community members expressed heavily the importance of preserving our rural areas, particularly in the Coreyton area. While this was one of the top ideas that most community members wanted to protect, the other top was affordable housing. Those two ideas, they don't go together. You can't preserve farmland and create affordable housing without having some kind of conflict. And so I thank you for starting this plan, but I do feel like we need to start tweaking it a little bit to where we can make everyone a little bit happier. Over the last 5 years, we've seen almost everywhere in our county in Coreyton that we love drastically change or almost be completely diminished. We have the new red light at the Harbison's Crossroads. That's helped a lot. But with the Gibbs Middle School, our traffic is horrendous now. So this planned growth area is in the dead epicenter of this. We can't even get a crossing guard at our schools during the school hours. We've tried for years. What this plan does not consider is the destruction of most of the remaining prime farming soil in Knox County, particularly along Washington Pike. We keep hearing over and over this month that Knox County is not an ag county. I don't know where all of you live, but I live in Coreyton, and out there we are an ag county, and we want to keep it that way. We want the cattle, we want the farmland, we want the produce, and we want the dairy. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure we're down to one dairy farm in our entire county. I feel it is my responsibility to leave behind a good legacy for my children, and getting rid of the last of our farmland and character is not what I want to leave behind for my child. Once the developers have their way out here where we are, we'll be just like Hardin Valley, and I think we can all agree that we can learn what not to do from that situation. Please do not add to the planned growth area anything that funds are not secured already to coordinate infrastructure improvements. Poor planning led us to where we are now, and I think we have time now to do better. And please do not forget about the people and families that already live here and their livelihoods in your plan to accommodate potential residents. We want our farms in Coreyton to eventually be around long enough to all be Century Farms. And let's not forget that our farm dollars are just as important as our development dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. Up next is Calvin Thompson, and on deck, apologize, is Charlie Debeveau. Sorry about that. But Mr. Thompson, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and county of residence.
Thank you, folks, and I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank a farmer for the food that was provided on your table, because they had a lot to do with it. My name is Calvin Thompson. I'm a farmer in Knox County, live out on Washington Pike, and my ancestors who settled in 1845 in Coreyton, and we are registered a Century Farm. We farm about 300 acres. Today we raise mostly beef, but in my lifetime we were milking over 100 cows. We have raised soybeans, tobacco, corn, hay. Today we market our cattle under the name Thompson's Tender Beef, and you can find it on Facebook or on our farm. We also support the Coreyton Food Bank and the New Life Methodist Church Food Bank. I've been on the board of directors of Knox Farmers Co-op, Knox County Farm Bureau Board, UT Ag Extension Advisory Committee, and am currently commissioner of the Soil and Water Conservation District. Our farm is located in the proposed rural area, so we are safe at this time, but the new plan to growth area will put a lot of pressure on us, on our neighboring farmers to sell their property, because developers will be offering top dollar. It's already happening. And this month we had a farm next door to me that sold to a developer. With that being said, folks, I hope you will keep us rural in our area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Charlie, I'm not going to try your last name again. I'm sorry. But sir, you've got 3 minutes, sir.
Everyone slaughters my last name. It's okay.
Sorry about that. And then also, sorry,
It's
on
okay.
deck is Michelle Nuzil, I believe is how you pronounce that one. So, but go ahead, sir, please.
Close
Thank you.
enough. Close enough. My name is Charlie Debevoise. I'm a resident of the city, but recently bought a 123-acre farm in the county off of Ruggles Ferry Pike. First, I want to thank everyone for tackling, which is undoubtedly a very complicated and thorny issue. We all seek the best for our city and our county, and for the future of our wonderful community. People are moving here by the thousands, in part because of the proximity to beautiful farmland, untouched rolling hills, and the great rivers that surround us. We've watched our neighbors, Atlanta, Nashville, become clogged with traffic caused by ill-conceived suburban sprawl. People are choosing Knoxville precisely because it's not congested, because we value rural culture and outdoor recreation. My wife and I recently bought a working farm off of Ruggles. It sits on a half mile of the Holston River. It's truly an amazing spot. It's home to bald eagles, river otters, deer, turkeys, and truckloads of soybean. It is only intact because the community fought off, they hired a lawyer, they organized, and they fought off a development that would have smothered the property with 480 homes. We intend to put most of this property under a permanent conservation easement, hopefully with the help of Mr. Clayball over here. Growth is inevitable, but growth needn't be destructive. I urge you to consider the economic benefits to restricting sprawl and instead investing in developments that provide diverse housing options, retail stores, restaurants, all within walking distance. It's known as a town center. not subdivisions that destroy our rural character. For these reasons, I support the map proposed by Advocates for Balanced Growth, head by Kevin Murphy, who is fantastic, by the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Michelle Nuzil, and Lisa Starbuck will be on deck. Thank you. Please state your name and county of residence. You have 3 minutes, ma'am. Thanks.
Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Candace Michelle Nuzil, and I am one that I have also come here and have been here for 15 years. I'm also the first woman farmer to put my land in a rural preservation for the simple reason that I don't want the land and the nature to be developed. In that area, I am surrounded by the Thompson's farm. I'm also representing Liz Green, who has 140 acres. She couldn't be here this evening. Kathy Martin also is a neighbor of mine. I have started trying to figure out, working with the soil conservation on trying to figure out how I need to make some money off my land and farm it, due to the fact, and I will get back to this in a second. I gotta find it. This is a Knox County Sheriff badge. I also worked for the Sheriff's Department. And on this badge, I wore very proudly and served my community for 6 years. And unfortunately, I had to quit due to the fact that my husband is disabled, so I am also a caregiver. But on this badge in Knox County, if you've ever looked at it very closely, it says commerce, and above it, it says agriculture. That is something that I was very proud of wearing because this county was about ag. If you look back into the history. Anyway, that's why I brought that to show you that. Living off of Washington Pike, I drive that road all the time. Of course, I also, when I was working for the Sheriff's Department, trying to get to places, it's a nightmare. You have Rita Elementary School. We have the DF there. You've got officers from 3 different places bringing inmates in and out of there all day long. You have 3 shift changes during rush hour and schooling letting out. You can't even get down that road. You got to try and find alternate routes, which is very, very difficult. That's one of the things that I'm really kind of concerned about, as well as other people that have talked about. I drive tractors and large vehicles with trailers. I have livestock. It's very difficult to get down these roads. They're very narrow as it is. And if you look at the stats on the roads between Tazewell Pike, Washington, and Emory, and Millertown Pike, there is an accident on those roads every single day. And not just maybe 1, but 2 or more. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to get up here and kind of speak a little bit. I'm not a generational farmer, but I want to be, and I'm trying to stay that way. And also keep in mind that the future farmers of America and our 4-H kids that we're trying to keep into ag as well and out of trouble.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your service in Knox County. Lisa Starbuck is next, and that'll be followed by Winston Blazer. Ms. Starbuck, please state your name and county of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Lisa Starbuck. I live on Babley Road in the Rita community. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. As a member of the Rita community, we are facing the fact that you are planning, as currently shown on the map, to change 6,000 acres of rural area to planned development, planned growth. And that's a pretty big burden for any one community to take on, especially given that we have very little infrastructure in that area. There's Washington Pike, Millertown Pike, Tazewell Pike, and Emory Road, which are all 2-lane roads. There are some small improvements planned, but there's nothing significant going to be done. I heard a mention of the new Gibbs Middle School. Most all of the Ritta area is not zoned for Gibbs Middle School, just for your information. I really hope that you will reconsider, but certain areas of the map are, in my opinion, inappropriately being changed. I think that there should be more public input on where, if you're going to expand the planned growth area, it needs to be close in so that we avoid sprawl, and we need some more public input on where the sprawl, where the planned growth should occur, because although we had a lot of public input on what people liked about living here and what they wanted to see and what they wanted to preserve, the top two things were affordable housing and preserving the rural character and nature of Knox County. And so we need to bear that in mind, and greatly expanding the planned development area will not accomplish that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Starbuck. Mr. Blazer, and then that'll be followed by Kevin Kennard. Mr. Blazer, you have 3 minutes, sir. Please state your name and county of residence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. My name's Winston Blazer. I live on a 120-acre farm in East Knoxville off Ruggles Ferry. Raise cattle, have about 50 to 75 head, depending on the time of year you come out. I'd like to thank the committee and the staff for the work on the growth plan. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to address some of my concerns and comments. I'd like for you, I'm not going to repeat all the many points and things that you've heard today, but I'd like for you to carefully consider the many comments that you've heard today about the preservation of farmland, the importance of agriculture to the state, to the county, just in general, the financial impact, the beauty it brings to Knoxville, and also remind you, as this young lady did just a couple of speakers earlier, in the state seal, the word agriculture is boldly displayed right in the center of that seal. I think that speaks volumes for the character of this state and why we all love Knoxville and Tennessee. In my previous career as a CEO of a large development on Tellico Lake, I saw firsthand the importance of planning and doing it properly and looking at all aspects and walking the property and talking to folks and their needs and so forth. And I realized this group has a no-win situation and the mayor is put in a very hard spot. But done properly, the general population, the general good of all is benefited. There's a few naysayers that would disagree with that opinion, but as on a whole, it generally benefits all. But I've also seen in my career before I retired, planning that went amok, went south because of wrong information, a wrong slant, wrong pressures. I wasn't in politics, but I will say political gamesmanship, and it was a disaster. But the problem is once that decision is made and the land is taken, the decision is made and the development goes in that direction, you no longer can repeat or repeal and take it back. You're stuck, and you have to make good with a poor situation, and that is lose-lose for the general populace. So I ask you to consider all these comments today and take those into consideration in your future planning amendments and so forth, and look forward to seeing the results. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Kevin Kennard, and then is Carrie Pittenger there? Pittenger here? Okay.
Kevin
Thanks.
Kennard, 5115 Jones Road in Knox County. Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak, committee. A lot's been said tonight, but I think you can agree that there's some real common themes. And that's because when you look at the Knox Advanced Public Forums that many folks here participated in, it was very clear what the folks, the populace of this area wanted. It's very clear. And Mr. Mayor, I would just ask, you are in a tough spot, but I would just ask that you consider what the desires of the many are, not the desires and the agenda of a few. With that, I'll give you 2 minutes and 20 seconds back.
Ma'am, you'll please state your name and county of residence. You have 3 minutes. And then on deck is Anna Kern.
Thank you. My name is Anna Kern. I'm speaking twice, representing two people.
Okay.
Knox County. This is for my Aunt Martha Kern, Carrie's mother. She's the co-owner and manager of Strong Stock Farm, a 1,000-acre farm and a continuously operating family farm since 1791. I acknowledge and welcome that others in the coming years will want to make Knoxville their home. We love Knoxville and understand why others desire to live here. What I worry is that without ample thought, much of what is loved about our town will be lost or at best diminished. The impact on the local environment of 70,000 new residents could be somewhat mitigated by concentrating new development inward rather than targeting outlying areas, which are mostly without jobs and services. The plan of just spreading the development out mandates commuting, increasing traffic, congestion, and pollution, as you all have heard. Many of the proposed development areas have arteries that barely support existing traffic, might as well the addition of thousands of new commuters. Added residents will inevitably mean added pollution. And this seems like the exact wrong time to choose to replace farmlands and woodlands with subdivision. I dare say that many of our current excess carbon is being sequestered in the surrounding farmlands, safely stored by the grounded pastures. And it just seems like the wrong time with increased environmental demand to take away much of what keeps our area pristine and welcoming. Have you all thought about all these new residents that all these new residents will surely need to eat? There are a lot more agriculture products produced in this county than most realize. If you think of your food coming from the grocery store, maybe you need to try to remember back in the early pandemic. The U.S. food system is highly concentrated, which works great until it doesn't work. All it takes is a disruption in the supply chain to empty the shelves at large chain grocery stores. If you notice, when this happened in 2020, our local groceries and farmers markets pretty much carried on like normal. Our farms alone supplies in the neighborhood of 30,000 pounds of meat annually to the local area, and we are just one of many local producers, most of which have their farms targeted for future residential development on your current proposed plan. I beg you to try and look beyond the easy targets of local farmers and open spaces for future development. I think it would serve everyone better if we looked at growing inward, where there are already services, jobs, and schools available without mandating community. I think it is time to look at stopping the sprawl and consider the value of preserving our farmlands. This is the wrong time to choose and to replace farms and grasslands with subdivisions. Thank you. Can I have another 3 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Mayor and committee members. Anna Kern, 211 Kern Place, Knox County. I'm an 8th generation descendant of the family that owns Strong Stock Farm, which I just mentioned. And I'm also here representing my father, George Kern, who's the co-owner along with my aunt that I just spoke for. We are a 1,000-acre farm along Rutledge Pike and the Holston River and a major supplier to Three Rivers and Good Golly Tamale. It's the family desire to keep farming in this beautiful piece of land and to maintain the underdeveloped character of this land for future generations. Currently, Strong Stock Farm plays host to several nonprofit organizations, such as Nourish Knoxville, Random Acts of Flowers, and Legacy Parks Foundation. Anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 people enjoy visiting the farm annually. This exposure to large rural acreage, we hope, engenders a spirit and appreciation for the outdoors, open spaces, and we're only 15 minutes away from downtown. Many reasons why folks are starting to move to Knox County. We believe that access to nature should not be a privilege, but rather a right for everyone. This is sacred land that you're looking to develop on, and our family honors and respects the land, and we have ancestors and Native people that have done this for many, many generations. Research shows that folks connected with nature generate more feelings of calmness, joy, and creativity. Folks are less likely to develop depression and anxiety, which many of us are experiencing currently. I'm sure many of you all can remember in 2020 the reprieve that you felt from being outside and being in nature. Ideally, we need to preserve these spaces close to us to allow folks the mental, physical, physiological impacts that rural land has for our overall well-being and our health. Strong Stock Farm is that for me. I and many can attest to this, when you drive down these gravel roads that many of these farms are represented on, you can feel like you can breathe again. Your shoulders relax. You can actually feel calmness in your body and in your mind. By developing the spaces, you're stripping away mental well-being, physical well-being, and emotional properties that are necessary not only for our current community, but the 70,000 folks that are looking to move to Knox County. In conclusion, we hope our history and future of farming and good stewardship of this will be considered by this body. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Jennifer Udi, and that'll be followed by Sharon Boyce. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Ms. Udi, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and county of residence. Thank you.
You did, yes, thank you. So like you said, my name's Jennifer Udi. I live on McCarty Road in Knox County. I'm speaking on behalf of my good friend Carrie Pittenger, who couldn't be here this evening. She resides in Holston Hills, also in Knox County. So before I start with Carrie's comments, I just want to echo what Anna said. As somebody who studies the impact of the outdoors on human physiology, I cannot stress to you enough the importance of green spaces for Knox County citizens. So with Carrie, she'd like to start by saying, thank you for allowing her to share how she feels and to share what she thinks about the proposed plan. Her choice to buy in Holston Hills was largely due to its proximity to the strong stock farm that they work on. It was also important to us that they live in an area that was not newly developed because she doesn't want to contribute to new urban sprawl. Her husband works and serves the farms of East Tennessee as a large animal veterinarian and with her day job with local children. In addition, though, they are active farmers on that farm where their family properties reside, and they rent areas on the west side of Ellistown Road on Rutledge Pike to the east side of Mine Road. All of these lands are homes to numerous wildlife and wild plants. It's not uncommon to see a deer, an eagle, a red-tailed fox, the kinds of animals that you don't necessarily see in other parts of the city. It's an opportunity that she has to take a break from working in the summer to enjoy the sweet taste of pawpaws or blackberries like many people have spoke about tonight. Carrie states that I'm an 8th generation farmer of a family that gets to love these wild moments while farming the Strong Stock Farm, and a 5th generation to farm at the Chesterfield Farm, both century farms right down the road in Knox County. I'm the great-granddaughter of Alice and H.P. Imes. My grandfather, Albert Kern, donated the land for the public use of House Mountain. The importance of preserving land and ensuring that all in our city have access to green spaces has been deeply instilled in me and is a core family value since long before I was born. These values I intend to pass to my son, HP, who at the age of 1 is already farming at my side. When I think of cities and places that I love to travel, they have one thing in common. They have planned footprints with very little urban sprawl, where you can easily enjoy the amenities of urban living and the beauty of green spaces in the same morning. I think this unique character and our proximity to the mountains has drawn people to our city, but I've watched sprawl overtake many of our precious green spaces and farmland. At the current population growth, I understand that growth is inevitable, but there's no better time than now to thoughtfully invest in innovative solutions for how our city grows, to invest in infrastructure where areas that are crumbling instead of spoiling another green space. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Boyce, you're up. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and county of residence. And after Ms. Boyce is George Nicely.
Sharon Boyce, 9520 Westland Drive in West Knoxville. Mine are more procedural. First, the maps, the future land use map, and again, the growth policy map are blurred. They're just, they don't show the boundaries exactly where the rural areas are and the planned growth, and this needs to be fixed before you have another hearing so the public knows what you're doing. Second, we don't know what you're really voting on. what documents are you using, what text are you using, what maps are you going to be voting on from this committee? Is it just the growth policy map with urban plan growth and rural and a map and that 6-page document? What about the future land use map that I kept seeing in the packages? What about the 400-page comprehensive plan? Are you voting on that? We don't know, and you need to tell us, and you need to make us a list so we'll know what you're supposed to be voting on. What are you including in this growth plan policy? And I know that under state law, under the regional general plan, you can move that into the growth policy, but you haven't told us that. And we don't know exactly what you're going to be voting on. The next thing is Mr. Moyers correctly cited a part of the growth policy plan, but there are other parts of the growth policy plan in the Tennessee state law. And the one that I'm really looking at, and I think is why we have a problem here, is that in the definition of planned growth area in Tennessee Code Annotated 6-58106B, it says that before a county legislative body, not the mayor, the legislative body, the county commission, may propose planned growth areas to the coordinating committee, the county shall conduct at least 2 public hearings. Notice the time, place, and purpose of the public hearing should be published in a newspaper of general circulation in the county not less than 15 days before the hearing. Now, I'm asking tonight, did this plan go to the committee before all of this? And if it had, all of these things you're hearing would have been told to the county commission before it went forward. So I'm suggesting that we're missing a crucial 2 sets of hearings that were much earlier in this process that I couldn't find have occurred, and I'd like to know if they did. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyce. Up next will be George Nicely, and that will be followed by Bob Thompson. Mr. Nicely, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and county of residence, sir.
I'm George Nicely. I live in Knox County. I'm also, like my cousin stated in my statements from my sister that were read earlier, I'm an 8th generation farmer in East Knox County off Rutledge Pike. And I feel like this growth plan takes a very important part of our state and our community and disregards it. Our agriculture is very important. It's a crucial part of our life and livelihood. And I feel like this map has just been a overview, a satellite view of what space isn't developed, and then it's gotten put on paper. And it's not what our community wants. You see that here. You see the support that all these people come and they keep saying the same thing. Our farm's been in our family for 232 years, and we don't want to see it surrounded by housing developments and subdivisions and pollution and waste and poorly managed infrastructure like we have gotten in the past. And that's all I have to say. I'll give you your minute and 45 back.
Thank you, sir. Up next is Bob Thompson, and followed by Colleen Body.
Thank you. Bob Thompson, South Knox County. There are so many questions that can be asked about this, but I'll try to limit it to 3 points. Mainly process matters, and to follow up on what Ms. Boyce just said, the growth plan statute, section 106, has various requirements, one of which is for the county to support its proposed amendments with specific projections, determinations, and reports. Some of that kind of data does seem to have been included in the appendix matters here, but I asked if there were actual reports as required for that matter, for that data. And then one important reporting requirement, which I can't see having been complied with, is for the county to take into account, quote, all areas within the current boundaries of municipalities that can be used, reused, or redeveloped to meet growth needs. So I ask, has that study of the city areas been done, particularly in light of the city's movement toward missing middle infill housing, in light of all the multi-family apartment buildings that are built in the city? So I ask, how can you project what growth needs have to occur in the county unless you take this required look at what's happening in the municipalities? Second point would be, again, as Ms. Boyce mentioned, what are you being asked to approve here? Now, thank you, Mr. Snowden. My understanding from Mr. Snowden is that although you've heard a lot about the comprehensive plan, what you are really being asked to approve is only the growth plan policy and the growth map. But the problem is those are so intertwined with this proposed massive restructuring of the general plan information, you don't really know what you're being asked to approve. In contrast, in 2000, when the first growth plan came up, the general plan and the zoning rules were already established, already in place, but that's all getting thrown out here. So you're really being asked what some people would call a pig in a poke. You're being asked to approve something that is not defined. We don't know what's going to happen. You could call it a pig in a poke, or you might also say that you're putting the cart before the horse. Or maybe you're trying to buy a horse without knowing what kind of cart you need. So I ask, how can you proceed without knowing more about what's going to happen with the comprehensive plan? Oh my, running out of time. The third point, there is a lot of information here, a lot more questions that can be asked. The public engagement process was limited. It did not really get into the growth plan specifics. It asked us what kind of development we want to see, but it did not ask where. And for example, the current plan, the map shows major expansion of the growth area in South Knox County along Chapman Highway. But none of that was in any of the three scenarios that were presented to us during the public engagement process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. So up next is Colleen Body. Again, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. And then when I can pronounce, Jack King will be on deck.
Hey, Mayor, it's Colleen Batty. I met you about a year ago. You remember at the ice cream shop?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't bring ice cream with you tonight, did you?
Yeah, we got to talk a little while, and I got to share my story. I'm from Cruz Farm, and I see several familiar faces. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm happy to be here and to support my community. This Cruz Farm is not on the map, thankfully, but a lot of my friends and fellow farmers are, and I'm here just to support them because farming is so important to this community. And when I went to UT and lived on campus, I missed the farm, like you were saying about being outside, Anna. It was like I had to get back to the farm. And part of the reason was my parents, how hard they worked and how passionate they are. And my dad, he has about 600 acres that he's conserved out there. And he's bought all the acres from milking cows. He didn't inherit any of that. And I'm so proud of him. And he's leaving such a legacy to our family. And I fortunately was able to buy my first land in East Knox County. My husband and I, Manjeet Batty, he's from Nashville, so he's a foreigner, but he has made roots in East Knox County, and he loves it here, and we're dairy farming together. So we bought 70 acres, but you didn't know this. I didn't tell you this when I shared my story last year, was that I originally wanted to open an ice cream shop on our farm and not in downtown Knoxville. But my neighbors, who are so supportive of cows getting out of the yard and cows and tractors all over the place, and my neighbors always help me get the cows back in when they go mess up their yard. But they didn't support an ice cream shop on the farm. And that was kind of hard for me. I was in college when we had meetings and they said they didn't want us to develop it. But I'm so appreciative of that because it it's probably why I have an ice cream shop downtown. And with the success of that shop, I was able to buy about 70 acres next to my parents, and it had already been split up into lots for houses. And so we were able to piece it back together and keep it a farm. But I'm here to ask you to take another look at this map and to take out this prime farmland. And I'm really glad that Kevin Murphy invited me and all the work he's put into this tonight. And I think one thing that we can all agree on is how passionate farmers are. It's more than just a job. It is family. It's our future. And, it's the only, we can't make more farmland. And I know everybody says that, but it's the truth. And you have the power to make Knox County a beautiful farming community, and I would love to see you do that and keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. King, you'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and county of residence, and after that is Herb Anders.
Hi, my name is Jack King, Knox County, live on Harris Road. Thank you all for your service, and I just want to take a moment. I'm not a farmer, I'm a pastor, but I want to thank all the farmers that I count as neighbors nearby. I'm just honestly deeply moved by the tradition and the heritage of farming nearby. So thank you for producing the food for our county. I've participated in some of the Advanced Knox initiative phases, and I'm grateful for that process. I saw that there were good governing principles in that, and I believe those principles are still there, thinking particularly holistically. But when I've seen what's been proposed, I don't believe that's been achieved in the outcome of what's been given in the map itself. So some of the concerns that I bring are the tremendous load that will bring, as others have shared about things like roads. I think also thinking holistically is that there's quite a disproportionate ask on the square mileage in the Ritta and Gibbs area compared with other parts of the county, that the cost that would require for us compared with the county as a whole. So I think the principles of growing holistically, and it is coming, support that, but we're being asked to take on so much more of that than other places in the county. I want to give you another perspective. I moved to the Ritta area 2 years ago. I grew up in Fountain City, have lived out in West Knoxville. And my kids, when we needed to live near to my mom in Fountain City, we asked them, do you want to live in a subdivision or in the countryside? And to our great surprise, they said countryside. And that's been a great place for them to grow up. But we had another hope for that, and that's that my wife's a marriage and family therapist. She's a small business owner, and she has a home office where we are in Ritta. And after 2 years of serving her clients there, where we have Knox County clients, we have others from Blount and Sevier counties, it is not just her care for them that is making a difference, it is the place. They speak about being able to come in with cow pastures nearby, gardens. I'm trying to cultivate our land to honor the farmland that has been. And this is honestly serving those who have mental health needs in our city and in our county. Not just her, and she's really good at what she does, but it's the place. It's the peacefulness that others have spoken about. We have tremendous mental health needs, and that's another perspective of what we're saying that we want to be preserved in the Ritta community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Up next is Herb Anders, and that'll be followed by Ben Mullins. Mr. Anders, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and county of residence, sir.
My name is Herb Anders. I live in the Ruggles Ferry community in Knox County. Thanks to the members of this growth plan committee and their time for working on a plan that will help guide the growth of Knox County. My first question would be, has this committee looked into previous plans that have sought to guide the growth of Knox County in a responsible way? Secondly, has this committee researched to what degree those plans have been implemented and the effectiveness of those plans? In looking at previous plans, I would like to bring to your attention the East Knoxville Community Plan, which was adopted by the then Metropolitan Planning Commission on September 14, 2017. This plan was developed during the development of the Midway Business Park at exit 402 on Interstate 40. As a side note, that development is still vacant. This adopted plan outlines community and corridor plans focused on the French Broad and Holston rivers. Some of the specific recommendations mentioned in that plan and the overall theme of the plan was to maintain the rural character of the area. The East Knoxville, and I'm quoting, the East Knox Community Plan brings together the best targeted growth and preservation strategies to preserve and enhance the area's rural character and landscape. The strategic direction directs growth to the most appropriate areas and increase the number and type of land development and protection tools available to all private landowners. Another quote from this plan asks the question, how do we define rural character or rural area? Is it rolling hills, undeveloped open space, white picket fences running down a narrow two-lane road, small communities, river views, farmlands? The qualities that make up rural character, and I'm quoting from this plan, rural character are hard to define, easy to spot, and often a perception that is unique to the individual. Whatever it is that makes much of East Knox County rural, many of the qualities are at risk of disappearing. As growth pressures spread, the new and typical suburban type development that gets built look out of place. What they're saying is the suburban style development looks out of place in a rural community. Protecting the character of the area requires one to first look at the existing rural character. The rural character is the defining features of East Knox County, end quote. Here's another quote from that same plan. East Knox County does not have the tools in place to absorb a portion of the county's growth in a pattern that respects the area's tradition and natural, rural, and historic features, and the area is therefore vulnerable to undesirable development patterns, end quote.
Mr. Andrews, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, sir.
All right. In respect to what Ms. Brooks said, to the number of people moving into the county, approximately 77,000 people. If the average family size is 2.5 to 3 people, that's approximately 25 to 30,000 households. That's 1,350 housing units per year. In 2019, there were over 4,000 permits issued for housing units, including single-family, multifamily, and apartments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anders.
I've got one more thing. A statement that I've been living my life by for the last 20 years. Always be open to change, but never underestimate the power of tradition.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mullins, please state your name and county residence. You have 3 minutes, and then next up on deck will be David Leone.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Jacobs, Mayor Kincannon, Mr. Smoke, and members of the committee. My name is Ben Mullins. I'm an attorney at the law firm of France, McCall & Seymour. I'm regularly in front of Planning Commission, City Council, Knox County Commission, representing property owners and land use and zoning issues. This evening, I represent the Home Builders Association of Greater Knoxville. The Home Builders Association is a nonprofit trade organization established in 1951 that's made up of over 500 companies engaged in various service industries for home construction and development. Of these 500 members, 295 are based right here in Knox County, which includes over 150 home builders. The primary function of the Home Builders Association is to serve as the home building industry watchdog. To that end, we appreciate I think the word was Herculean efforts towards the long overdue updates for the growth policy plan. As you know, that plan was first adopted in 2000 and has not been updated in 23 years. We're not here to talk about the issues with the map that some of the other speakers have raised, but we have some concerns with some of the changes in the text that reflect a significant change in policy toward allowable density within the rural areas itself. Currently, under the growth policy plan, section 3.2 and 3.5, it allows densities for 2 dwelling units an acre if there's not adequate infrastructure. But in areas where there is adequate infrastructure, water, sewer, adequate roads, it allows consideration of 1 to 3 dwelling units an acre. That has been eliminated from the growth policy plan, for the proposed growth policy plan, and 4.3 in the current plan only allows consideration for 2 dwelling units an acre. We believe that's a mistake to move away from this policy in this current crisis of housing affordability and scarcity of existing housing stock. The Home Builders Association estimates that to acquire and develop a piece of property with 2 dwelling units an acre, the cost to them would be almost $100,000 an acre for each parcel, each unit. That does not speak to affordability. That is well over home prices that would be considered affordable in today's market. We agree that the plan should be promoting both preservation of rural areas, which we're not asking to change, but we're also asking to allow for considerations for additional density in areas where the infrastructure is adequate to help address this affordability issue as we have 70,000 people moving into the area. I really applaud Mr. Murphy, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Devosay, I believe, buying a farm. Knox County needs farms, and people want to farm their property. They want to buy the property and use it as a farm. They want to have it tied up in perpetuity through conservation easements. We applaud that. That's well within their rights, and Knox County needs that. All we're asking for is for consideration of the properties that aren't being actively farmed, that are for sale, for consideration for additional density where the infrastructure is allowed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins. Next up is David Leon, and that'll be followed by Larry Silverstein. Mr. Leon, sir, you'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and county of residence.
Thank you very much. My name is David Leone. I live on Washington Pike in Knox County. I'd like to first thank the members of this committee for having this meeting so that we can let you know our feelings about this very important issue. There's no question in my mind that this plan will have major impacts to the Ritta and Gibbs area, if not to mention Washington Pike, Tazewell Pike, Emory Road, all of those areas. My wife and I retired to Knoxville 13 years ago. We are transplants. We had a checklist as we were looking for where we wanted to have our forever home. Knoxville and the area along Washington Pike met that checklist completely. We love the parks. We love the urban-rural mix. But most importantly, we love the people and the place that we live. It is, to us, community. It's what community is. Over the past 13 years that we've been there, however, we have seen some changes. Specifically, we've seen increased crime, which has been a very big disappointment. Washington Pike itself, a very old wagon trail going out to the old farms, isn't much different than it was probably 100 years ago, except that it is paved today. It isn't much wider, however. There are no shoulders, and the telephone poles are feet away from the edge of the road. Traffic on Washington Pike is getting heavier, as you've heard before this evening. It impacts the morning and evening commutes even more so than when we first moved there. Even the daytime traffic, which surprisingly is increasing. One of my big fears as my wife and I age in place is that there will come a time when the response time of first responders is too long. When we discuss planning for growth, as this whole issue is about, we speak about many attributes, including housing, schools, utilities, roads, etc. These are necessary for new development. They are the foundation to what we call community. But these attributes in themselves do not guarantee that we will get what we hoped for. We must take care of what we develop. We must manage the growth. What's lacking in this proposal, in the planned growth area, is addressing how this plan will be managed over time, how it will be implemented, What is the process for implementation? Will we manage the growth, or will the growth manage us? Will we be controlling the growth, or will we be chasing after runaway growth? With proper oversight and management, we can accommodate a diverse growing population. We can preserve the natural beauty of East Tennessee. We can help maintain farmlands and support agriculture and the revenue it creates. And we can keep the character of what makes East Tennessee so special.
Mr. Yolani, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, please, sir.
I will do so. Thank you, Mayor. I ask you to consider how we will manage the proper implementation of this growth plan. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your consideration. And thank you for your listening.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Larry Silverstein. That'll be followed by Megan Howard. Mr. Silverstein, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and county of residence.
Larry Silverstein, Knox County. I'm speaking as chairperson of Community Forum. The coordinating committee must understand there is much more at stake than just amending the growth plan map by adding 17 square miles to the planned growth area from the rural area. Because of the policy and procedural changes in this proposed amendment, every parcel of land in Knox County outside Knoxville and Farragut is affected. This amendment has profound effects. Under TCA 658-107A, all land use decisions must be consistent with the growth plan. The amendment to the growth plan must be put on hold and must be considered in conjunction with the draft comprehensive plan and map, which have not yet been vetted by citizens or elected officials, and with the not yet written Unified Development Ordinance and revised zoning ordinance. This amendment refers to the draft comprehensive plan as if it has already been adopted. Clearly, this amendment was not carefully drafted or fact-checked. The amendment includes, in quote, other recommendations, end quote, a statement lifted from the existing 2000 growth policy plan. Quote, these recommendations address significant policy issues raised during the coordinating committee's previous year-long planning process, end quote. Has this coordinating committee had a year-long planning process? As far as we know, this committee has only met on October 24th. The amendment contains two whereas clauses that are not true. Number one, quote, the existing growth policy plan required that the committee remain intact at all times and such as not been accomplished, end quote. The existing plan actually states a standing growth policy coordinating committee should be in place at all times. Number two, the proposed amendment states, quote, the existing growth policy plan required that the plan be reviewed every 3 years for amendment to meet changed conditions. The existing plan actually states the growth policy plan should be periodically reviewed and, if warranted by changed conditions, amended. This review should occur every 3 years, beginning with the third anniversary of the effective date of the plan, end quote. TCA 658-104-D1 says, quote, a growth plan may be amended as often as deemed necessary. The word should is not mandatory, and thus the review and standing committee are not required. Never in the public meetings nor on the Advanced Knox website was it stated that sector plans would no longer exist in the new comprehensive plan, nor that the concept of density would not exist except in the rural area. Low density residential and medium density residential are gone. Protection for slopes is gone, despite much public support for such protection. 2022 survey commissioned by the Realtors showed 83% of Knox County residents consider the county's quality of life excellent or good. Comments at public meetings offered no support for the conclusion that we need a whole new comprehensive plan and elimination of our current planning and zoning structure.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
A drastic change to the growth plan must not be approved. Finally, I want to object to a limit of 3 minutes to address so many important issues. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next up is Megan Howard, and that will be followed by John Cook. Ms. Howard, please state your name, county of residence. You'll have 3 minutes, ma'am. Thank you.
Megan Howard, Y Springs Road, Knox County. Thank you for hearing us. I know it's a little redundant, but it's important, I suppose, if we keep saying it. I understand growth and development are inevitable. That's a common phrase when we're here meeting for these. We do implore that you look at a slow and balanced growth plan, including decreasing the growth plan expansion area, a plan that enhances the beauty of East Knox County and recognizes its contributions from our ag zones while maintaining our character and acknowledging how far behind we are in infrastructure. Transportation in the area has been lacking for decades. Tazewell Pike and Washington Pike are the only two routes in and out of this proposed growth plan, and developing further north and east when we are already this far behind seems catastrophic. Have there been any traffic studies done in the past year to analyze the already overwhelming demand due to rapid growth that we're already seeing? I understood he said something about a mobility study in the future, but again, we're so far behind. Our schools are at capacity and refusing transfers within the Ritta Gibbs community. The Ritta Maloneyville community is still busing their children to Holston. We do not get to go to Gibbs. How many new schools are included in this growth plan? The impact that including and developing 800 acres in the Gibbs community that it will have on those schools alone is astronomical. Ask anyone who has ever tried to get through Tazewell Pike in the morning trying to get to work through the drop-off line or come home at rush hour. The same most definitely can be said when you're sitting from Target all the way out to Murphy Road on Washington Pike. Congestion in the school zones due to recent increases in subdivision development already and zero changes to accommodate for this transportation, even though we've been told 2,000 road trips for this development, 4,000 road trips for this. Nothing's been changed. This has and will continue to funnel and affect our neighbors, especially Union County. Also, all above mentioned needs to be the main enforce to mandate no more than 2 dwellings per acre. Of the predicted acres encompassed in this proposal, what percentage are to be left for green space, parks? Rewiton Park has turned into a tetanus shot waiting to happen, so essentially now we have Beverly Park. It is very concerning to me, even though I'm not a farmer, I do live in the ag zone, on an ag zone, the number of century farms and large operating farms that are encompassed in this growth plan. I have seen the direct agricultural contribution from East Knox County and cannot imagine disturbing the integrity of our community in this way. What safeguards are in place for the ag zone? What buffers do we have from this development? Have there been any recent, not 1990s, any recent environmental studies showing the direct negative impact of this type of sprawl, leaching, evaporation due to increased pavement, the decline of species diversity, the hazards of overcrowding dwellings in one area, and effects of pesticides and fertilizer? There seems to be a potential of all of us paying more for less, more in taxes, which is inevitable, for less green space, more in utilities, for less ag zones, and more sitting in traffic with less times with our families. Newtown will take my view of House Mountain and turn it into just houses. Please consider holding off on this endeavor until there is a smoother, smaller, and more balanced plan with more transparency and funds to allocate to correcting infrastructure problems, not only in the future, but more importantly, see us now and fix the present problems. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Up next is John Cook, and that'll be followed by Mark Crockett. Mr. Cook, please state your name and county residence. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening, John Cook. I'm from Loudoun County, and I appreciate you all listening to us this evening. My concern with this is that we do a lot of building and developing in Knox County. We also own a significant amount of commercial property in Knox County, which is retail, office buildings, and that. And right now, the question is the question of affordability. And that's the question that we have before us, that you guys have before you, as far as where do we move the folks that are moving here. I'm a transplant. I moved here from Illinois 22 years ago. This community was very open and welcoming to me and my brother. We've done very well here. I grew up on a cattle farm. I understand the importance of farms. We had 100 head of Angus beef cattle, multiple crops. And so I understand the importance of farms. My dad was a FFA president. And so, farming is very close to me, but we have to have a place for folks to live. My concern with the section 4.3 is just changing and down zoning from the 1 to 3 units an acre down to automatically 2. As Mr. Mullins said earlier, that makes a big difference in the affordability, and affordability is a massive problem right now. It changes drastically what it costs to put those lots on the ground and to be able to put homes on the ground. we're not asking with the change in 4.3 to do anything different than what has been done the last 23 years. We're simply asking for that to stay the same. We're not asking to take anyone's farms or take any land that someone does not want to sell. We're not asking to take any land that doesn't have the appropriate utilities and the access that is necessary. I want to bring a couple points. We're downzoning that area. We're only adding 12.8% by my calculations in the planned growth area. So in 23 years, imagine how many folks have moved into Knox County. I didn't do these figures, so I don't know. But I know it's way more than 12.8%, the population growth in the last 23 years. We're only adding 12.3%, and then yet we're going to downzone that area outside of it. That's going to create a big issue. One thing I want to point out as well is a lot of folks mentioned farms and farming. And yes, we need farms, we need farming. But much of this agricultural land is not being farmed. I'll probably take an arrow in the back for saying this, but we've purchased 2 farms this year that hadn't been farmed for 50 years. One of them had 3 inches of topsoil and one of them had 6 inches of topsoil. You cannot put a number of cattle or much agriculture on something such as that. And that's the reason why those farms were not being farmed. Those folks that own those farms should have the ability to sell their farm at a market rate and not be dictated by government what their property is worth. In conclusion, I just ask that you all would look at section 4.3 and consider moving that back to what the statute has been, which is the 1 to 3 units an acre, and then let that be decided as to what we get when we come before the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Next up is Mark Crockett, and that'll be followed by Sandra Kerbellick. Mr. Crockett, please state your name and county of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Jacobs. Mark Crockett, Knox County. I'm coming tonight on behalf of the French Broad Preservation Association. I'm the president of that organization. We've been around for a while. We were heavily involved in the Midway Industrial Park plan. I guess, one thing that the French Broad Preservation Association tries to do is voice our opinion when plans are put in place that do not preserve the natural beauty of our county or what we've heard is the rural character of our county. Those are 2 big reasons why folks are moving here, is the natural beauty and the rural character of Knox County. And I know you have a delicate balance. We need affordable housing. We also need a beautiful place to live. It's rural character is kind of hard to define. I mean, what exactly is that? I've heard it mentioned a lot tonight. It's kind of hard to understand until you experience it. I know, Mayor Jacobs, you recently had an opportunity to float down the French Broad River with Carol Evans and a group of folks. I hope that you experienced the natural beauty and rural character of Knox County on that float. I hope 20 years from now that folks can do the same float, experience the same kind of experience that you had after 20 years of growth under this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crockett. Sandra Kerbellick, and after Ms. Kerbellick is Wayne Klein. Ms. Kerbellick, please state your name for the record and your county of residence. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. Sandra Kerbellick, or Kerbellick, it goes both ways, Knox County. I'm a new face to many of you. Let me introduce myself. I have a master's in planning and architecture from the college at UCLA. I have a planning career spanning 37 years in 5 states. I have been a planning commissioner in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and a planning commissioner here in Knoxville, Knox County. I am going to address most of my comments to a letter that was sent on November 22nd. This letter has 8 questions, and the main reason behind these questions, and many of the people speaking to you today, is really just plain confusion. Confusion due to lack of supporting information. We know what is being proposed, But because we can't find the data supporting it, we can't speak to the substance of the proposal. We don't understand what this is leading to. We're very confused. Changing the growth policy plan is a big deal. I agree it's old and needs updating. There should be extensive public participation to do this. The draft Advanced Knox Comprehensive Plan recommendations have not had any public review. Work on Advanced Knox has had great public participation, but the final recommendations have not had any public review. Your committee is the first time that we have seen these final recommendations and the first time that we have seen the proposed changes to the growth policy plan. We hope through you to better understand the why of these proposed changes and then be able to discuss the data supporting these proposed changes. For example, 57% of the expanded planned growth area is low-density and medium-density suburban residential. I would submit that if we want more affordable housing, that means less suburban residential planned area. If we want to keep our rural and our agriculture, less suburban development. It is also fiscally cost ineffective to have suburban spread out sprawl. Title 658 106B2 of the Tennessee Code mandates that the county examine and report on agricultural lands, forests, recreational areas, and wildlife management within the planned growth area and report on the likely long-term effect of development expansion. I have not been able to find this information. Section 104A2 states it is the duty of the coordinating committee to develop a recommend growth plan. Agreed, as our attorney pointed out, this was for the original growth plan, but I would submit, just in the spirit of public participation, that it should also be for expanded new areas of the growth plan in the planned growth.
Mr. Bellick, I apologize. I might have to ask you to wrap up, please.
I'm wrapping. Okay. We are looking to you, our coordinating committee, to help us understand and participate in this process. We very much appreciate the past work done by Mayor Jacobs through the Advanced Knox study. I am asking this committee personally to make sure that a written response to my 8 questions is provided and that access to some of the supporting data is made accessible to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up is Wayne Klein, and he will be followed by Mary Long. Mr. Klein, you have 3 minutes, sir. Please state your name and county of residence.
Thank you, Mayor. Wayne Klein. I am a resident of Knox County. I live off Westland Drive. I'm also an attorney at Hodges, Dowdy & Carson, and for the past 36 years, I have represented homeowners associations. Not a very popular job for an attorney, but I have also represented developers, and land use management has become a subspecialty of mine. And in the process of going through what you are going through, I find, as the previous speaker talked about, a lack of transparency and understanding of whether in the process of creating this plan, TCA 6-58-101 et sec has been followed. But most importantly for me, when a homeowner association president calls me and says, I'm looking at the map and I can't tell whether we're in it or whether we're outside of this planned growth area. I can't understand the future land use map, and it's not specific enough to determine or delineate who fits where. Where's the line? Where are the lines? You can't understand it. And it's not that hard to do because the city did it with Recode Knoxville. You can plug in your address and find out where you are on their lines, but we can't do it with this map. This committee needs to address that for purposes of what Mr. Moyer said on what your job is tonight. You have a plan in front of you, but it's not understandable. You can't understand whether the process has been followed appropriately, and you can't understand whether your property, if you live in Knox County outside of or in the unincorporated area, whether your property fits where. And that's inappropriate. And so I would suggest those changes be made in this proposed amended growth plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Next up is Mary Long. Mary, would you please state your name and county of residence, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Mary Long, Knox County. I live Gibbs community. Thank you for allowing us to speak on behalf of our community, and thank you to the county for starting the initiative to update the growth plan. Change is inevitable. However, the status quo for growth typically turns into a lot of sprawl, a lot of stuff and people, very poorly planned. I can't speak for everyone, but I believe that a slower, more balanced, compact expansion, even a more inward expansion, would alleviate many of these issues that are being imposed upon us. As a community, we would like to preserve our farmland and agriculture. It's necessary. We would like to see preemptive measures taken to improve our roads, schools, and infrastructure rather than tackling these issues after the fact. As stated, our public schools are already overcrowded, despite having recently expanded Gibbs Elementary and built a brand new middle school. There's a shortage of teachers. Teachers cannot adequately meet the needs of students if we continue to overwhelm small schools with hundreds of new pupils and nowhere to put them. The buses are already running at capacity. Some of them are transporting students from the middle and high together or making 2 trips. I have seen students standing on buses when they drive down the road. There's not enough transportation for the students that already exist in these county schools. What is to be done about transportation for potential incoming students? What's to be done about space in the classroom for these students? We don't have a multi-100-acre century farm. My family has owned our 72-acre farm since the early 70s. My grandfather moved here from Loudoun County. I'm the 3rd generation on this land trying to teach my children about agriculture and farming practices. We keep less than 100 head of beef cattle, some chickens, we garden. It's a smaller scale family farm. The area is filled with people like my family. I share a large border with this proposed Newtown subdivision. The subdivision, filled to the brim with catch-penny homes, will directly impact our land and the land of other people in our area. It will negatively impact the natural water sources, livestock, insects, and pollinator populations. There's been much education on the decline of pollinators over the last several years. It's not new information. I've been considering adding bees and other pollinators to our farm, but I'm afraid that my efforts will be futile. It's been proven that fungicides and herbicides have a detrimental impact on pollinators and native insect species. How can we keep from losing these species if we are filling up all of the farmland with subdivisions that are known to employ HOAs that insist on the use of such products to maintain their manicured lawns? I would like to see a study on light pollution and how it affects livestock. How is the water table going to be affected by all this new development? We have a natural spring on our land. How is that going to be affected? I can echo the traffic concerns. I don't feel like I need to. I think that's been covered. What about runoff? Our community has many concerns. Among those concerns are the effect of the proposed growth plan on our livestock, homes, water table, soil, roads, and schools. As a lifetime citizen of Knox County, I'm asking this proposal be reconsidered and minimized in favor of slower growth, keeping us rural, keeping us 2 dwellings per acre, fixing the existing issues that have been mentioned and those yet to be mentioned before we add millions of more dollars in new issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Long. That is everyone I have on my list. Is there anyone else here who would like to take advantage of the public forum? Sir, state your name and county residence, please, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Mayor Jacobs, members of the committee, I'm delighted to have a chance to speak just briefly. I thought I signed up with Mandy. Isn't Mandy in your office?
Yeah. She's over there. We might have just missed. What's your name, sir? I'm sorry.
Sir?
Yeah, what's your name?
Gene Burr, 3621 Maloney Road.
All right, thank you, sir, and sorry you were left off the list. My
It's all right.
apologies for that.
It's all right. I'm here and glad to be here. Wonderful to hear the folks from the rural part of the county speak up and hear their message. It's enriching. I have two concerns, Mayor. One, in the plan, it shows the area where I live, Lakemore Hills, as a growth area. And I know this is a broad brush plan, or I assume it is. Maybe that was intent. But just to assist your planners in fine tuning what may be the next iteration, that area defined by Alcoa Highway and the Tennessee River has about 20, by my count, about 20 vacant parcels. And half of those are probably non-buildable because of the terrain and the fact that they don't perk. There are 460 residences at the present time in that triangle. And so it doesn't leave much room for growth. The second point I wanted to make is to ask the committee, to you and the committee, how the existing commitments are going to be addressed. In 2017, we started a planning effort affected in large part, as you know, by the state's plan for Alcoa Highway, 6-laning Alcoa Highway. What businesses still remained in the Alcoa corridor at that time, half of them left because their customers couldn't get access to the businesses. It has left that area, that commercial area that was considered a support area for the surrounding 10,000 population, pretty much in limbo. In 2020, resolutions went to both the county commission and to the city council. The resolutions were approved. The language in those resolutions was pretty specific. It said to the commissioners and the councilmen that we want this area to be revitalized. And it gave pretty specific intentions as to what they meant by being revitalized. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, that area has pretty much remained in limbo. The other point I just wanted to mention, because I think it has a little more positive dimension maybe right now, is the matter of the missing link that you and I have discussed on occasion. The Knox Blunt Greenway is a wonderful part of the transportation plan to be realized. We hope that your parks director will see to it. Part of that goes through our neighborhood, and we're delighted to accommodate it. But we do want to see it happen. Thank you, sir. Thank you, committee.
Sir. Seeing no one else, I'm going to close. We have two more. Okay. Please state your name and county of residence. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
I'm Carol Montgomery, and I'm from your only historic village in Concord, in Knox County. So I was on the committee for Advanced Knox, and we came up with this wonderful plan, but being here has really impacted how I feel about it. And I think they're right. We need to have absolutely detailed maps, and we have to protect our agriculture. I wanted to say a couple of things. Are we using grey fields, these places that have had, factories and things on them that are really not of any use? Can we use those for our high density? And that would be really useful for high density without that being in the rural areas. And I also wanted to let you know, if you think about English villages, of which I am an expert, there's a lot of tiny houses in a small area. There's 2 per acre. I think we should ban mansions from the rural areas. And small communities, if you have a small community, it doesn't take up a lot of space, and you've got somewhere where the community can come and buy things they need without having to trek all the way into the city. And there will be jobs for people there. I think that would be helpful too. So I love the idea of mixed-use small communities, but I think we do need to have that detailed map. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And ma'am, please state your name and county of residence. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Colleen McWilliams. I reside here in the city of Knoxville, so Knox County. I want to point out, listening to all these stories about these rural farmers, I'm actually originally from Los Angeles, a highly dense location. Even though California is one of the leading producer of agriculture in this nation, but being able to find local produce and be able to know your farmer is not possible. And something about living here for the last 8 years, I've been a vegetarian for over half my life. I'm not anymore because I get to know my farmer here. I can have a conversation with them. I can go and be on the land that is providing for me my nourishment. And I just think that that's really important that this doesn't exist anymore. Across our nation in a lot of different ways, and being able to live in Knox County where I can know the person who is raising that cattle or that chicken or whatever it may be and growing those crops that I am able to put on my table is such a blessing. And I think also is very important that we invest in that because we are an unhealthy population and we've talked about mental health, but also how our food is produced is not super great. And by investing in all of these farmers who are here contributes to us having a healthier population here in Knox County as well. So please put that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And do you want to approach the podium, please? State your name and county of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Famika Elliott. I reside within Knox County. I'm here to represent Rooted East Knoxville Collective. We are a collective serving East Knoxville residents by providing free gardening education, garden beds, and holistic wellness. I'm also going to read a letter of support from the Food Policy Council as well. The Knox County Food Policy Council exists as a forum for local stakeholders to develop and assess public policy strategies and make recommendations that promote a healthy, fair, and sustainable local food system. We are the nation's oldest food policy council, celebrating 41 years of collaboration this year. Food Policy Council is tasked by the city and county to continually monitor Knoxville's food supply system and recommend appropriate actions to improve the system as needed. The Food Policy Council has worked with Knox County Planning Commission staff to include input from food system stakeholders throughout the Advanced Knox Comprehensive Land Use and Transportation Plan, hosting input opportunities for these members and participants in round 1, 2, and 3 of the public input session. Over the past year, the United Way of Greater Knoxville food system stakeholders from Food Policy Council, community leaders, and policymakers recently completed a community food security assessment where more than 777 individuals were engaged in priority zip codes across Knox County around food security and overall health and well-being. Survey results show 97% of those surveyed believe that it's important or very important to conserve or protect local farmland or community gardens. 47% of the sample had grown their own food and 16% currently compost. Given our strong history of monitoring Knoxville's food supply, our comprehensive community data, and our strong network of stakeholders of the community, Food Policy Council stands ready to advise the county on tools and methods to support the vision of a thriving county that honors its natural beauty and cultural heritage while supporting diverse people and business. Tools and methods may include, but are not limited to, urban agriculture, conservation easements, community land trust, urban agriculture, certified wildlife habitats, community composting, and other tools and processes that might come up as the Knox County experiences more growth and density. We look forward to investing in the assets of our community to build a healthy, fair, and sustainable food system. Just some data sharing from the community assessment that we compiled. 47% of Knox County residents that were surveyed have grown their own food while living in Knoxville. 54% of people that have never grown 57% have stated that they have never grown or their own food or would like to. And 97% of these people believe that it is either very important or important for our community to conserve or protect local land for farmland or community gardens. I'm coming from a different aspect. I do desire to protect local farmland as we hold it close to our traditions that it is needed in rural communities, but working here in the inner city, urban agriculture is very much important as much as rural farmland is. Historically, we know what's happening still in our city, inner Knoxville. So whenever I hear, everybody else come up here and say we need to work more inward, I just want to reflect on the record to show that there is movement within our community to continue urban agriculture and increase food access. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Please say your name and county of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm Louise Donahue. I live in Knox County. My families have farmed in Knox County for over 200 years. And I would just request that in your decision-making that you take the time to personally visit some of these farms and areas that we're discussing. The Thompson Farm, I know, would love to have you. Strong Stark Farm would love to have you. And that also you take advantage of the outdoors and climb House Mountain and look out to the east and look out to the west, look out to the north and look out to the south and see this beautiful land and the area in which your decisions are going to be impacting. So please take advantage and see this area that's being discussed and being reviewed prior to making your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands. So I'm going to close public forum, and if it pleases this body, would you all like to take about a 10-minute recess and reconvene at 7:35? Does that work for everybody? Okay, so we'll reconvene at 7:35. Thank you to everybody who took advantage of public forum. We appreciate your input. Thank you. Yeah. If everybody would please return to their seats, we'll get started again here. Again, thanks to everybody who took part in public forum. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of the amendment. I'm just going to throw it open, so just hit your light to be recognized, and let's go ahead and talk about this thing. Any questions additionally for Jim or Amy? Any other concerns? That Amy Brooks, I'm sorry. Amy Nolan? Did you?
I think I'm doing this right. Let me see.
We can all hear you now. Yes, ma'am.
Being on this side's kind of strange, you know. Anyway, I want to discuss the study that was quoted here by the UT Extension Service. And we reviewed that earlier today when Kevin sent that to folks to the Growth Policy Committee. And that study is a strange study because what they included in that too was all food and processing facilities, beverage facilities, manufacturers that used wood. So to get to that huge number that they have, you would include things like Bush Brothers, which does not can here. It is a food processor, but its corporate headquarters is here. You would include Custom Foods. You would use Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola, and to get to anywhere close to 2 billion. So we did pull numbers from the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, and we found the total gross domestic product, in Knox County is something like 32 billion. For ag, forestry, fishing, hunting, GDP, it's 2.2 million, and that comes out to 0.007% of total GDP. And the employment in agriculture, forestry, fishing, hunting in Knox County equals 174 people. So while I totally respect and honor those who have worked for generations on their farms, I hope you can continue to do so. I hope you will help get in contact with Mr. Claybo. But I grew up in a farming community too, and I also saw where farmers are generally land rich and cash poor. And I saw where people sold their farms to pay for things like long-term nursing care for the elderly, for college educations, and just the difficulties of the economics of farming are in itself very, very difficult. So I want to make clear that there's nothing in this plan that, as one speaker noticed, it says takes our land. The land is not taken. It actually preserves more land than under the current scenario would. I think 5,000 acres is what we saw in that earlier scenario. And what we saw the last meeting was the amount of property tax. If we continue to go our current route, we will have a deficit, and which will require significant property tax increase, which is surely a threat to family farms and folks that have large tracts of land, where this current plan, could produce a surplus to do the things that we want to do, build roads, build schools, do things of that nature, which requires tax revenue. Finally, a lot of discussion about people moving here, causing population growth. I do want to point out that a lot of our growth has come from folks that are 55 and older. They make up over 25%, and this county continues to get old and continues to get old quick. The number of young professionals that can fill employment at Bush Brothers and at Custom Foods and all those folks that are cited in this, we've grown by them less than 3%. And that is where our economic future is. So those are our kids and grandkids that can't find affordable housing right now. And so I support the amendments as written, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nolan. I'm going to recognize Mr. Hubbs and then Mayor Concanon after that. Sir.
Okay, the Knox County Soil and Water Conservation District looked at these maps that we had, and we voted this month at our regular board meeting that we put all of the rural conservation place type land into the rural area. And I have some maps here I'd like to give to you, and we would very much consider that you look at them and see what we're talking about. And also, we'd like to keep the Green Acres Farm and the Strong Start Farm into the rural area, because those are two of our biggest farms in East Knox County.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Concanon.
Thank you, Mayor Jacobs, and thank you to all the members of the public who took the time to participate in the Advanced Knox process and to come speak to us this evening. I know some of you, and appreciate the time you've taken to share your perspective. I just wanted to share with my fellow committee members that I grew up in a rural county in Virginia that was very fast growing, and by the time I left high school in the 90s, it was subsequently, I think, ruined by sprawl. There was a loss of farms, a loss of green space, an increase in congestion, and also everything got very expensive because it was unfettered growth, without any, with all the negative side effects of that. The good news is we live in Knox County, Tennessee, and we can learn from the cautionary tales of communities that have experienced this type of growth in the past. And when I listened to the discussion, of the commenters this evening, one recurring theme was that we want to protect farms and green space. And that's not just the people who spoke tonight. That was the result of a lot of the surveys from what I understand. And that we also need to address the growth in population and the need for housing at all income levels, but particularly affordable housing. And we can't stop people from coming to our community. It's a free country, and we have a great quality of life in this community, and people want to live here, and that's a nice problem to have. But some people made it sound like the challenge, the conflict between housing and protecting green space are irreconcilable. And I think that they are reconcilable. And in fact, I think that the place types included on this map contain the reconciliation between these two competing community needs. And the solutions that I think that this committee would benefit to understand better are walkable, compact growth, the categories called traditional neighborhood, corridor mixed use, and in particular, town center mixed use. And so I guess I have a question for staff. I look on this map and, I just have it on my phone here. I'm not, the overall map, when you see the proposed future land use map, it's a lot of yellow, which is suburban growth, and almost, very, very little town center mixed use, the, burgundy or maroon color. So it's my understanding, and, I have a degree in planning, and I'm the mayor of Knoxville, and we all have a keen interest in, the city of Knoxville boundaries are not included in this, but we're all Knox County residents and Knox County taxpayers, and we all will have the same future together, the same farm, the same food shed, the same watershed, the same land use patterns that affect the whole county, affect everyone in the city as well. So I guess the question I had is twofold. One, if we had more maroon, more town center mixed use, would that serve as a way to accommodate the population growth while protecting more green space and agricultural land? And two, if that's the case, why don't we have more maroon town center mixed use on the map? And I'm not sure to whom this is directed, Ms. Brooks or Mr. Snowden. So is the town, and also there was a big poll, and it seemed, I know I voted for town center, and also the town center one preserves green space, and it was also the most fiscally efficient as well, because more walkable communities are cheaper to provide, sewer and electricity and transportation and sidewalks and parks, all the things that people want in addition to green space outside the town center. So if you could answer those two questions, or if not, or if you have answers, if not today, then maybe in time for our next meeting.
Sure. Those are really good questions, Mayor. Thank you. I can attempt to answer them, and we might need to do some follow-up and look to my colleagues here at the table if they want to fill in some gaps here. But yes, if we were to move more of the projected residential growth into these mixed-use town centers, yes, that would shift, pull away from the suburban residential or lower-density residential place types. I think one of the things that we were trying to balance is this interest in all these different types of housing. So make sure that there's a good mix. I think our county over the last 20 years has developed in a more lower density residential pattern, and still wanting to be able to accommodate that, but then also start to introduce some additional new place types and try to encourage that type of development to happen and find those places where she has some numbers up here, and I'll quote those in a second, but making sure that those town centers are in areas that can be supported by infrastructure currently or in the near future. And so those are some things that went into how those were applied. Is there something here that we want to?
If I could, just for the benefit of the committee members and members of the public, is North Shore Town Center, which is inside the city of Knoxville, would that be considered under these definitions, a town center mixed use?
Yes, it would.
Okay. And is it true that that kind of development outside the city limits isn't currently possible?
It is not currently possible.
And it's my understanding that that's been very popular.
Yes, it's proven to be.
So that kind of town center model is popular. It's the Maroon Town Center mixed use that, so then I guess then the question is, what did I guess why this map doesn't contain more of that maroon? It seems like that meets the needs of the housing and the desire to protect farm and green space.
Yeah, and obviously I am not a planner, but I will give you my perspective on it. What I felt like, some of the locations that I remember we strategically placed town centers were Manorville Highway at Emory Road and the intersection of Steel Road and Hardin Valley. Those are really key corridor intersections in our community. The intersection of two state highways or intersection of two very main arterial roads in the county. I think we felt like the suburban residential in the traditional neighborhood in certain areas that were, further off those main arterial roads necessarily wasn't appropriate at that time. That was my perspective and what I felt like from an engineering infrastructure perspective.
I'd also just add, you mentioned the yellow. There's also like a darker sort of, mustard color, which is suburban mixed residential, which is really the next step up, is to try to include additional types of housing. So thinking about attached, like duplexes, multiplexes, townhomes. So to kind of start to introduce that slowly into what has been traditionally more low-density residential.
Okay, well, I guess, I think it would, I think that contrary to some sort of conventional wisdom, density is what preserves green space. And I think that the more we can include that in the growth plan, that will serve the interests of our need to protect farms and green space and natural areas. I don't, I'm looking at this map, I can't look at it and tell where are there some other places where town centers were considered and then not, and then that you changed your mind? And what were the criteria? Mr. Stone said major intersections, but there's a lot of intersections in Knox County. How many town centers are included in this plan? I can't really tell.
That would be something we'd have to follow up on.
Okay.
The number.
Okay, I'll let some other people ask some questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor. And if I could interject just really quickly. So you have the corridors and the town centers. And to me, it's almost like a hub and spoke, right? The town centers anchor the corridors at either end. Could you talk about like the corridor development and, you have corridor commercial, corridor mixed use, and what would go along with those and how that would relate to, say, the town centers at being the terminus of those?
Yeah, so the town centers are intended to be the node, like you just mentioned, Mayor. And then the corridor commercial, which is red on the map, that includes a number of different types of uses as well. So multifamily buildings as well as attached residential. So it is still considered a mixed use place type. So it would include duplexes, multiplexes, and townhomes along those main thoroughfares.
Thank you. Whose light is that? I'm sorry. Amy, is that still your light on or?
Oh, do I? Well, yeah, and I guess what I would also say about too many town centers, I don't know that you could have the retail demand if you had. I think when they did the North Shore Town Center, there was actually a competing plan. You might be able to help me, Farragut city manager, because it was close, I think, in your area. They really couldn't sustain it. To sustain those large commercial retail boxes.
Well, I can
It's
speak to
tough.
that. I was on the school board when we approved this new elementary school at North Shore Town Center, and we built the school, and then it took a while but it was in like 2008. It was the big economic downturn. That was a long time ago, and we're experiencing a lot more growth, a lot faster now. And again, I'm not a developer, but I know that one's been very successful and profitable, and people like living there. And so, it seems like that is just something there's a demand for that also meets our needs for long-term sustainability and protecting the quality of life of the green space that people do come to our community for. But a simple question of like how many town centers are included, that would be helpful to understand. And also if there are places that were considered for town centers that didn't meet the criteria in this proposal, and why, and I'd appreciate understanding that better.
Thank you, Mayor. Sarah?
Could I ask, and this may be a question, sorry, no, I don't know how to turn that off. There we go, okay. This may be a question for, thank you, yes. For county staff, but also process questions. So some of the feedback I've been hearing, we heard this from the forum tonight, but I've also just heard it from personal contacts, is that a lot of people don't understand the intended relationship between this proposed growth policy plan map, the one that shows the expansion of the planned growth area, and the future land use map. And I think that'd be interesting to hear like how, and the reason I mention this is that it's the people that are really concerned about preserving farmland are much more pleased with the future land use map than they are with the proposed growth policy map. And so I guess my question is, are they actually at odds? Because when I look at the future land use map, to me it's saying that within the yellow, there will be a lot of green. And I would like to hear kind of how that relationship works officially so we can help people understand.
Hi, committee. My name's Kathy Olson. I'm going to take a shot at answering this. So the first process we went through was trying to find locations that were suitable in terms of like a growth demand and suitable in terms of kind of capacity availability for growth place types. And that's what we did with the future land use map. We intentionally tried to put as much growth within the existing planned growth boundary as we could before we looked at areas that could support an expansion. So we did that through the scenario planning process. Let me see. So with each one of the areas that we placed on that map, we had some limits about kind of proposed density, and we knew what would be allowed within the rural area and not allowed. So what we did was we looked at the place types and we drew a line around the place types that kind of formed a boundary between the rural development allowances and a planned growth allowance. And we drew that line for the planned growth area around those place types. There were existing areas that were planned growth that were out kind of towards the Mascot area, and I think actually I just looked up Green Acres Farm is actually within the existing planned growth area, as is Lakemore Hills. They're within this existing planned growth area. But what's happened over the course of the last 20 years is the infrastructure hasn't been built out to support that growth. So we didn't want to show more growth happening in that area. So instead, we painted the place types within that existing planned growth area as rural conservation, which would allow the farmers who own land within there to not be impacted in terms of future prices of their farms. We didn't want to take away someone's livelihood or their retirement plans by changing that designation, but we wanted to allow that density to be clustered in such a way that you would still retain the rural feel of that area and be respectful of the fact that there was not infrastructure to support a traditional development. Does that answer your question? if you have.
Yeah, I think that helps explain the difference that we see, you know, when we look at just the yellow developed versus green, more rural areas. One specific question I've been getting from the public about this process is whether voting to approve this proposed amendment kind of locks this in and doesn't really consider the more nuanced map that is the future land use map. Like, how do those, what are we syndicating by saying, yes, we approve this amendment?
I can try to attempt to give you a little bit of background. So the original process to establish the growth plan boundaries happened prior to the comprehensive plan. So this was back in 2000. So the general plan that we are currently operating under was adopted in 2003. But the intent here was to try to update these at the same time. But the growth plan is the plan that has to be done first. And so then the comprehensive plan has to comply with that growth, those growth boundaries, that growth plan. Does that make sense? I'm trying to make it really simple. Does that work? I don't know. You guys can jump in here. So that was the intent here. But we really utilize this whole process through the Advanced Knox to help inform any changes that were going to be proposed to the map and the amendments that you all are considering right now. That helpful?
And then one last little question is related to several of the folks brought up their concerns that transportation wouldn't rise to the occasion of this development that we've mapped out. Is there anything, as you all see it, in the proposed amendments that would limit the improvement of transportation to support this growth?
I don't believe so. Could you expand a little more? I don't believe, I don't know if I'd understand the question clearly.
I guess what I'm trying to give voice to is people were worried that something about the planned growth would then lock them into not having the opportunity to improve these transportation corridors, or that there's a mismatch somehow, like they're getting trapped. And I just wanted to make sure that all of the planning staff who'd worked so hard on this could reassure the public that that's not a side effect.
No, for sure. And I appreciate your clarity on that. But no, I mean, I think if you'll see, if you look at our capital budgets for the next coming years, whatever this plan ultimately looks like, our capital project, road improvement, infrastructure improvements are going to closely align with that plan. So yes, that is the intent, ma'am.
Thank you. Good. Thanks. Mr. Smoke?
Thank you, Mayor. So just to follow up on the map question one last time, this committee and the work that we're going to be doing is strictly to approve this growth map, correct? Not the land use map, which will be done by commission. Is that correct?
That is correct, and there's also some language that goes along with it. Section 1, you should have a copy of it.
I'll have some questions about that too. Yeah.
So it's that and the map, yes.
Okay, perfect. Another question, probably for staff, more along the lines of the planned growth area that is being proposed to be added to the area is a little over 17 square miles, which in my terms is a little bit bigger than the town of Farragut overall. So when we look at the largest two areas tend to be Hardin Valley and the Washington Pike area. So infrastructure, sewer, water, roads, things like that are vitally important to be able to have in those areas. Are those already present in those areas that are mapped and outlined right now, or are those still needing to be expanded in those areas?
There, I guess, in the planning process, Mr. Smoke, we obviously we have some operational improvements that we're going to be repaving and actually adding some lanes to the existing configuration of Hardin Valley that's currently curb and gutter. To the west of that, it is a capital project to expand it to probably some sort of multi-lane facility. As well as the project to, improve the interchange at Watt Road and have Everett Road look like it'll be a 4-lane median divided facility that then terminates there at Buttermilk at Everett, but obviously the intent would be to extend it further out into there. So it is in the process. So it's nothing certainly complete, but it's in the works.
Okay, and if I can, a follow-up on just some of the text amendments themselves that are included in this. And I know these are all just suggestions to look into. But if you look at section 4, which is dealing with the rural area, the first section under 4 says the following policies should apply to the rural area. I think a key word to change or consider changing would be should to shall. I think when you have shall, that means that those are the things that are going to happen in that area. So that's just a consideration to take in. The other one is going down to section 4.2. When you're talking about rezonings within the rural area shall be limited to the following place types. Just a suggestion that shall be limited to zoning districts that are consistent with the following place types. So I know you probably don't have those zoning districts yet that you're going to need to put in from the county and going through the county amendment process, but that may be helpful to include if you'd like. And another section dealing with section 6, really going down to section 6.2 in urban growth boundaries. It talks about the urban growth boundaries shall be consistent with the applicable plan adopted by the Knox County Planning Commission or the Farragut Land Use Plan as appropriate, or one created hereafter in Knox County under provisions of state law. I think sometimes that, we don't have in Farragut much urban growth boundary left to grow into. It's rapidly being used up. But I think if we have a plan that is consistent with both Knox County and the Farragut Land Use Plan, that would help solidify what those developments that could be put in place would be a little bit more clear to us, certainly, and hopefully to County Commission as well. And my last only question would be, that next section that says as appropriate or one created, does that actually supersede the language right before that? Probably a question from Mr. Moyers regarding the Knox County Planning Commission or the Farragut Land Use Plan.
I try not to be at a loss for words, but I'm not exactly sure what that would mean, to be honest with you. I'll have to look into that a bit more.
Okay.
Now, I'll get back to you the next meeting about that.
No problem. Mayor, final question I've got, and this is probably for staff. Under section 8.1, it talks in 8.2, kind of go hand in hand. It talks about when boundaries are not quite, you can't quite tell where they're going to be. They may be partly in the growth plan and partly within two different classifications. I'm assuming we probably have some examples of why we put that language in there, or what we were trying to determine what would be the easiest way to get those changed in the future. Do you have maybe just an example of something that may be able to help me out understand that a little bit better?
I might defer to Law Director Moyers there. We were just speculating, is that might be language that's currently exists in the plan?
I'm sorry, Mr. Moyer, 8.1. It just talks about if a lot of parcels are split by a boundary, then the portion that's going to be classified will be basically the largest lot.
Yes.
So I was trying to, in my mind, trying to understand how that would work.
Okay, well, as an example, there are many places in the county where at some point in the past, the county commission or whoever was in charge of the decision decided, let's put a commercial corridor down a main highway. So, for example, down Maynardville Highway through Halls, you've got a commercial corridor that extends 50 feet or so from the road on both sides. When those were put down, they were put down without regard to property lines. And so you would have parcels that were split, partly in the commercial district, partly residential or agricultural, something along those lines. So when we talk about these lines, the impression I get is we're not getting so micro or so granular that we're running them down while taking into account the lot lines. So if you have a situation where a lot is split between urban growth or planned growth and rural, and the building authorities are trying to determine whether or not the use would be appropriate, you would look at the total area and determine, which is the majority, and that's where you would allow the use. That would be the way I interpret that. Now, this is just for the growth map. When we start talking about zoning, hopefully there'll be less of that that actually pops up. And I know that in Knox County, and I suspect in the city of Knoxville, one of the powers of the Board of Zoning Appeals, where you have a lot that has a split zone, is the board itself can actually move the line up to 100 feet on petition of the property owner. So there's various ways to address that.
Okay, thank you very much.
And just to clarify, that language is included in the existing growth policy plan. It's just been moved to a different section.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Cardwell.
As of my understanding, I think I read through, there's several documents there, but there was something mentioned about slope development earlier, which is currently addressed, I understand, through a lot of codes. But I think I also read something where each jurisdiction is going to have to adopt its own slope development policies. I believe I read that somewhere.
It's on page 4 of the document you were provided. It's section 3 on page.
So it is not in the planned growth. It will be a separate piece. I think it might have been a misunderstanding to out in the public, thinking we're just going to develop all the ridges, but that gets addressed outside this policy, from what I understand.
I think that's correct.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, that brings us, I believe, to, I just lost my agenda with all of my paperwork here. My apologies. Yeah, so we will tentatively schedule the next meeting of this coordinating committee for Tuesday, December 19th at 5 p.m. here in the main assembly room. If any committee member would like to propose an amendment to be considered, please send that proposal to this email address, which is gpp@advancedknox.org. That's gpp@advancedknox.org. And unless there is an objection, I'm going to adjourn this committee. Stand adjourned. Thank you.